Chapter 2436. Arranging for the Pill Emperor Turtle. Master Joie, thank you for saving our lives. If it weren't for Master Joie, we would have died in the Divine Pill's secret realm. On the square, thousands of cultivators respectfully cupped their hands and thanked Juan. Among them, a forthright man took off his spirit ring without hesitation and handed it to Juan, saying, Master Joie, from now on, you are my great benefactor. Although my spirit ring doesn't have many valuable things, it is everything I have. Take it as my gift of thanks. Seeing this man's action, the crowd also took off their spirit rings and offered them to Juan. Juan was stunned, and with a wave of his sleeve, he returned the spirit rings to the cultivators and said, Everyone, there is no need to be so polite. This is actually what I should do. If I didn't step forward at that time, we would all have suffered. I was actually saving myself. Everyone can't help but feel guilty. Seeing Juan return the spirit rings, the cultivators on the square all showed their respect. If some of them were just thanking Juan for the sake of formalities, now they were sincerely thanking him. After Juan sent off the cultivators who thanked him, Palace Master Jing Yun brought Yao Xiangjuan and the others to Juan. Juan, I also want to thank you. Palace Master Jing Yun looked at Juan seriously. Juan smiled, then looked at Palace Master Jing Yun and the others and said, Are you planning to leave the Pill Furnace Star Field? Yao Xiangjuan nodded and said, Yes, my master needs me and Martial Uncle to go back for an important matter, so we can't stay here for long. Juan, you have saved me and Martial Uncle many times, so we are really grateful. As she spoke, Yao Xiangjuan hesitated for a moment before she said, If you don't mind, why don't you come with us to the Six Desires Palace? You've saved us many times, yet we don't have anything to repay you. Juan frowned. He wanted to go to the Six Desires Palace to take a look. After all, he wanted to find clues about Moyan of Wushang. However, Yao Xiangjuan and Palace Master Jing Yun knew many of his secret. He was afraid that he would be walking into a trap if he went to the Six Desires Palace. Palace Master Jing Yun was more experienced. She immediately noticed Juan's abnormality and said with a smile, Saving a life is like giving birth to a parent. Juan, I will not mention your matter to anyone in the Six Desires Palace. Furthermore, I can see that your cultivation has reached the peak of Void Sky's 7th step. Our Six Desires Palace has the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Cultivators who soak in the Six Desires Heavenly Lake will be able to instantly reach perfection in their current realms and help them break through their current bottleneck. It will also allow them to experience the scenes of the 7 emotions and 6 desires, improving their state of mind and cleansing their soul. When Juan heard this, he was moved. From the serious expressions of Palace Master Jing Yun and Yao Xiangjuan, he could tell that the Six Desires Heavenly Lake that Palace Master Jing Yun mentioned was definitely something extraordinary. It's the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. I remember that your Six Desires Palace's Six Desires Heavenly Lake is not open to the public. Even the disciples of the Six Desires Palace have to pass an extremely strict examination before they are qualified to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, right? The second elder, who was standing beside Juan, said in surprise. Second elder, between my life and the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, which do you think is more important? Palace Master Jing Yun asked indifferently. The second elder smiled embarrassedly and did not say anything else. I do plan to go to the Six Desires Palace. However, I have some matters to attend to here. Can we leave together tomorrow? Juan asked. Palace Master Jing Yun nodded and said, Sure. If you want to go to the Six Desires Palace, Juan, we can wait for you until tomorrow. Juan cupped his fists and thanked her. Then, he followed the second elder up to the 10th level of the Pill Pagoda. Only Juan and the second elder were on the 10th level of the Pill Pagoda. The black-clothed Juan sat cross-legged beside the brazier again. The alchemy flame was lying lazily on the black-clothed Juan's shoulder. Zhuo Xiaoyu, do you have something to tell me? The second elder looked at Zhuowen in confusion and asked. Just now, Zhuowen had sent him a message asking him to go to the 10th level of the Pill Pagoda. He said that there was something important to discuss. Zhuowen took out a palm-sized cauldron from his chest. As soon as the cauldron was taken out, 4 tortoise legs and a tortoise head stretched out from the bottom of the cauldron. The second elder's eyes were filled with confusion. However, he soon revealed a look of disbelief, as if he had thought of something. Old man, what are you looking at? Have you never seen such a handsome tortoise before? The Pill Emperor Tortoise looked at the shocked second elder with disdain. You guessed right. This is the Pill Emperor Tortoise. This tortoise shell is the Pill Emperor Cauldron. I think the Pill Pagoda should have records of it, right? Zhuowen said indifferently. The second elder said excitedly, yes, the Pill Pagoda does have records of it. It is said that the Pill Emperor Cauldron is a magical cauldron that can refine Tao confirmation divine pills. The reason why the Pill Pagoda's ancestor set up the Pill Pagoda was because of the Pill Emperor Cauldron. After saying that, the second elder reached out to take the Pill Emperor Tortoise. However, he was almost bitten by the Pill Emperor Tortoise. Old man, who do you think you are? How dare you touch me? The Pill Emperor Tortoise said arrogantly. The second elder was not angry at all. He repeatedly said that he did not dare, but his mouth was smiling from ear to ear. It was no wonder that the second elder revealed such an expression. Others might not know about the Pill Emperor Cauldron, but as the second elder of the Pill Pagoda, he knew it very well. If he had the Pill Emperor Cauldron, the rise of the Pill Pagoda would be just around the corner. It was very likely that the Pill Pagoda would regain its former glory. Pill Emperor Tortoise, the Pill Pagoda is the place that guards the Pill Fire. The Pill Fire should have a great relationship with you. In addition, you don't have anything else to take out in the outside world. I think the Pill Pagoda is the best place for you to stay, Zhuowen said. The Pill Emperor Tortoise's eyes spun. His gaze fell on the Pill Fire from time to time, revealing an expression of interest. The second elder looked at the Pill Emperor Tortoise expectantly. He knew that whether or not the Pill Emperor Cauldron could stay in the Pill Pagoda depended on this tortoise's words. For the sake of the Pill Fire, it's not impossible for me to stay in this broken Pill Pagoda. However, I have a condition. That is, I must become the master of this Pill Pagoda. You have to listen to me in the future, the Pill Emperor Tortoise said magnanimously. Zhuowen frowned. This Pill Emperor Tortoise was too insatiable. He was afraid that the second elder would not agree. However, what made Zhuowen speechless was that the second elder immediately agreed as soon as the Pill Emperor Tortoise finished speaking. He looked a little like a lackey in the marketplace. The image of the second elder, who originally had a sage-like demeanor, instantly collapsed in Zhuowen's heart. Seeing your sincerity, this Lord Tortoise will reluctantly agree to it. In the future, you are not allowed to touch the Pill Fire. Only this Lord Tortoise can touch it. Do you understand? The Pill Emperor Tortoise intended to act pretentiously and touched the Pill Fire. Unfortunately, when the Pill Fire saw the Pill Emperor Tortoise approaching, it immediately spat out a mouthful of flames. The Pill Emperor Tortoise's face was covered in dust. Then, it lay down on the black-robed Zhuowen's shoulder and continued to lazily nap. Chapter 2437. Heading to the Six Desires Palace. Seeing that the Pill Emperor Turtle had agreed to stay in the Pill Tower, the second elder was naturally overjoyed. He immediately looked at Zhuowen and said, Zhuo Xiaoyu, your clone. As he spoke, the second elder pointed at the black-robed Zhuowen behind Zhuowen. Zhuowen smiled and said, I'm afraid that my clone will have to stay in your Pill Tower. After all, the storm is going to be even more terrifying. I'm afraid that I won't be able to leave the alchemic fire. The second elder heaved a sigh of relief. He was quite good at reading people's expressions. Naturally, he could tell that the alchemic fire was completely dependent on the black-robed Zhuowen. If Zhuowen decided to take the black-robed Zhuowen with him, the alchemic fire would have to follow him. However, the pill tower couldn't control the alchemic fire's will. Now that Zhuowen had promised to let his clone stay, the second elder knew that Zhuowen was giving him face. Thinking of this, the second elder cupped his hands and thanked Zhuowen gratefully. The next morning, the pill tower was much quieter than before. Due to the end of the divine pill secret realm, many cultivators who came to the pill tower left the pill tower and the pill furnace star field one after another. In the huge square, Palace Master Jingyun, Yao Xiangjuan, Zhu Rui, and the others were waiting quietly. After a while, two figures walked out of the pill tower. One of them was a slender white-robed youth, while the other was a gray-robed old man. Zhuowen, second elder. Palace Master Jingyun's voice was cold. Seeing the two of them come out, she nodded slightly and said. Zhuowen and the second elder also greeted Palace Master Jingyun and the others. Then, Zhuowen was pulled into the group by Yao Xiangjuan. Palace Master Jingyun, I heard that the life and death pill of the divine pill secret realm has appeared, and Zhuo Xiaoyu obtained it. I believe that the Six Desires Palace is a righteous and upright sect, and they wouldn't do anything sneaky, right? The second elder suddenly said. Palace Master Jingyun was stunned for a moment before she said solemnly, Second elder, Brother Zhuo, you too can rest assured. I'm willing to swear to the heavens that I won't tell anyone else about the life and death pill. Zhuowen, who was standing beside Yao Xiangjuan, finally felt relieved. What he was most afraid of when he went to the Six Desires Palace was that the life and death elixir on him would be exposed by Palace Master Jingyun. At that time, the Six Desires Palace might target him and force him to hand over the life and death elixir. He had risked his life to obtain this life or death pill, so Zhuowen naturally wouldn't hand it over. Yesterday, Zhuowen had also studied the life and death pill and asked the Pill Emperor Turtle some questions. In the end, he came to the conclusion that the life and death pill wasn't suitable for Zhuowen at his current realm. If Zhuowen's cultivation reached the 9 steps void sky, the life and death pill would be extremely useful to him. He would be able to absorb the life and death chi inside and use it to comprehend the mysteries of the life and death realms. Of course, the life and death pill also contained the energy of the fusion of life and death. If used properly, it would be very useful to cultivators in the life and death realms. It could be said that the life and death pill was extremely mysterious and unfathomable. It was a supreme treasure that countless experts would fight over. Since Palace Master Jingyun had made a promise, Zhuowen felt a lot more relieved. At this moment, Zhuowen had never felt such an urgent mood. He wanted to refine the life and death pill. However, he knew that his cultivation was too low. He had to cultivate to the 9 steps void sky first. Therefore, Zhuowen was now eager to increase his cultivation. This was also the main reason why Zhuowen took the initiative to follow Palace Master Jingyun when she mentioned the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. By the way, Palace Master Jingyun, I plan to use a fake name when I enter the Six Desires Palace this time. I will also completely change my appearance and aura. I hope Palace Master can agree to this. Zhuowen said in a deep voice. It wasn't that Zhuowen didn't believe Palace Mistress Jingyun, it was just that the people here weren't the only ones who knew about Zhuowen's life or death pill. Any cultivator who entered the divine pill secret realm knew about it. Although the cultivators who survived this time were all saved by Zhuowen, Zhuowen wasn't stupid enough to believe all of them. Therefore, he requested to change his name after entering the Six Desires Palace. Palace Master Jingyun was startled, but she immediately thought of Zhuowen's idea. She nodded and said, All right, what name do you plan to change to? Tell me first. When we enter the Six Desires Palace, I will introduce you and dispel the other Palace Master's doubts. Just call me Long One. Zhuowen grinned and wiped his face with his right palm. His originally handsome and spirited appearance instantly turned pale and bloodless, as if he was an immature young man who had indulged in debauchery. Even the aura on his body was completely different from Zhuo Wen's original aura. Palace Master Jing Yun strangely looked at the young man whose aura and appearance had completely changed. With her cultivation, if she didn't look carefully and didn't know who Zhuowen was, she wouldn't be able to recognize that this person was Zhuowen. Moreover, Zhuowen's disguise technique was extremely brilliant. Even Palace Master Jing Yun found it difficult to find a big flaw. Zhuowen sighed in his heart. He was even more impressed with his master, Tai Ching. Tai Ching had given him 5 divine abilities, and now he realized that each of them was not simple. This disguise technique was naturally one of the 5 divine abilities, Shapeless All Life. He had already cultivated Shapeless All Life to great success. After changing his appearance, even those who were familiar with him might not be able to recognize him. Long One, everything is ready. Let's go. Palace Master Jing Yun changed the way she addressed Zhuowen very quickly. After she called him by his new name, she took out a flying divine artifact that looked like a flower and took the lead to enter the upper deck. The dozen or so disciples of the Desire Palace also followed behind. Big brother Zhuowen, let's go in too. Yao Xiangjuan stood beside Zhuowen and said with a smile. Zhuowen nodded and entered the flying divine artifact with Yao Xiangjuan and Zhu Rui. After boarding the deck, Palace Master Jing Yun activated the flying divine artifact. With a whoosh, the flying divine artifact turned into a streamer and disappeared. Zhuowen stood on the deck and looked at the countless meteorites that were constantly being shaken off. His eyes revealed a strange look. The flying divine artifact of Palace Master Jing Yun naturally could not be compared with the spacetime wheel, but it was much faster than ordinary flying divine artifact. By the way, Palace Master Jing Yun, I still have something to ask. Zhuowen cupped his fists and said. Say it. Palace Master Jing Yun nodded and said. In your 6 Desires Palace, is there really no disciple named Moyan Wushang? Zhuowen asked somewhat unwillingly. He had asked Yao Xiangjuan this question before, but Yao Xiangjuan had already firmly denied it. It was just that Zhuowen was not willing to give up. Palace Master Jing Yun simply replied, I have never heard of the name Moyan Wushang. Zhuowen was somewhat dejected. In his heart, he began to resent the black-clothed woman who took Moyan Wushang away. If he knew the whereabouts of the black-clothed woman, he would go to the ends of the earth to capture her. Chapter 24:38. The 9th heaven. The distance between the Pill Furnace star field and the 6 Desires Palace was extremely far. It wasn't something that could be reached in a short time. On the way, Zhuowen swallowed all the first 10 fusion divine pills refined by the Pill Emperor Turtle, and his aura reached the peak of the Void Sky 7-step. Logically speaking, Zhuowen should be able to break through the Void Sky 8 steps, but in fact, he didn't. It's not that Zhuowen doesn't have enough resources, but that Zhuowen's comprehension realm is still not high enough. Only his comprehension realm has reached the Void Sky 8 steps, so with the abundant resources he has, it's more than enough for him to advance to the Void Sky 8 step. Zhuowen estimated that if he wants to reach the Void Sky 8 steps with his comprehension realm, it will take him at least 100 years. After all, from the Void Sky 7 steps to the Void Sky 8 steps is a huge leap. If Zhuowen doesn't have a heaven-defying opportunity, it's basically impossible for him to break through in 100 years. The 6 Desires Heavenly Lake of the 6 Desires Palace gave Zhuowen an opportunity. Therefore, Zhuowen decided to enter the 6 Desires Palace despite knowing that it might be inappropriate. Moreover, he also believes in the character of Palace Master Jing Yun and Yao Xiangjuan. Zhuowen stopped cultivating when he realized that it would be futile even if he continued to cultivate. He opened the cabin door and went to the deck. He was lost in thought as he looked at the vast starry sky and the endless stars around him. For some reason, even though Zhuowen's cultivation has reached the Void Sky 7 steps, he still felt small and humble in this vast starry sky. The vast and boundless starry sky was like an unreachable mountain in front of him. He tried hard to climb to the peak, but he also found that his ability was insufficient. Moreover, Zhuowen also wondered if there really was no end to this vast and boundless starry sky. "What are you thinking about?" A cold voice suddenly sounded, interrupting Zhuowen's thoughts. Zhuowen turned his head, looked at Palace Master Jingyun, who was leaning on the railing next to him, and said with a smile, "I'm just wondering." Palace Master Jingyun showed a surprised look, then immediately chuckled and said, "What are you wondering?" "I'm wondering what kind of existence this vast starry sky is. Do you think it's possible for us cultivators to transcend the shackles of the starry sky?" Zhuowen asked solemnly. Palace Master Jingyun was silent for a moment, then she suddenly chuckled and said, "We cultivators were born in this starry sky, and we will die in this starry sky. I have never heard of a true transcendence cultivator, but in the legends, heaven-breaking realm cultivators can truly transcend heaven and earth. Outside the starry sky, they are the true great freedom realm cultivators, those who have severed their own karma and reincarnation. That's only a legend. Have you ever seen a heaven-breaking realm expert?" Zhuowen fell silent, then suddenly asked. Palace Master Jingyun smiled bitterly and said, "You're right, that's indeed a legend. I've never seen a heaven-breaking tier elite, and I've never even seen a Tao-confirming elite. But, forget it, it's useless for you to know about this now." Suddenly, Jingyun Palace Mistress realized that she had said something wrong, so she remained silent. Zhuowen looked at Palace Master Jingyun seriously and said, "But what? If Palace Master has something to say, please feel free to say it." Palace Master Jingyun shook her head and said with a bitter smile, "This matter is related to the secrets of the 8 heavens. Only the masters of the 8 heavens who control the heaven-breaking source know the details. I only know half of it, so there's no need to say it." "Palace Master, I hope you can tell me, I really want to know." Zhuowen looked at Palace Master Jingyun seriously and said sincerely. Palace Master Jingyun frowned slightly and sighed, "I only know the rough information. The Palace Master of the Will Desire Palace is the strongest Palace Master of the 6 Desires Palace, and the heaven-breaking source is in her hands. Only she knows the details." Zhuowen didn't say anything, but waited for Palace Master Jingyun to continue. He knew that since Palace Master Jingyun brought it up, she would definitely tell him. "I once heard that the 8 heavens are just a corner of the vast starry sky. Above the 8 heavens is the 9th heaven. There are many cultivators who have reached the 9th heaven, and there are even Tao-confirming powerhouses there. Moreover, the 9th heaven is the core of the starry sky. It's a place where the real powerhouses yearn for." Speaking of this, Palace Master Jingyun hesitated for a while and said, "About the 9th heaven, I only heard about it from hearsay. It's not necessarily true. You'd better not tell others about this matter, otherwise it will cause unnecessary trouble." Zhuowen cupped his fists and said gratefully, "Many thanks, Palace Master. Palace Master can rest assured about this matter. This Zhuowen won't gossip about it." Palace Master Jingyun nodded and left the deck, but her cheeks were a little red. Palace Master Jingyun knew that she didn't hear about the 9th heaven from hearsay, but from the Palace Master of the Will Desire Palace. Originally, she didn't even mention this matter to her disciple, but today, seeing Zhuowen so emotional, she suddenly became soft-hearted and told him about the 9th heaven. Even Palace Master Jingyun herself felt that it was a little unbelievable that she would confide in a strange man. However, thinking that Zhuowen had saved her several times, Palace Master Jingyun's heart felt a little better. She muttered in her heart that this was an act of repaying his kindness. The 9th heaven? Zhuowen was still leaning on the deck, but his eyes flashed with a sharp light. He didn't doubt Palace Master Jingyun's words. He knew that Palace Master Jingyun didn't need to lie to him about this. Originally, Zhuowen was still very confused about the starry sky, especially after the incident in the Divine Pill Mystic Realm and the blood-stained cliff. He had always been brooding about the fact that there were no Tao-confirming powerhouses in the 8 heavens, but now, Palace Master Jing Yun's words enlightened him. He knew that it's not that there are no Tao-confirming powerhouses in this starry sky, it's just that they are not in the 8 heavens, but in the mysterious 9th heaven. Thinking of this, Zhuowen became more and more curious about the 9th heaven mentioned by Palace Master Jing Yun. It's just that Zhuowen still has self-awareness. The 9th heaven should be very mysterious, and there must be restrictions on entering it. Otherwise, the lords of the 8 heavens would have left the 8 heavens long ago to seek better development in the 9th heaven. Thinking of this, Zhuowen also knew that his current strength is still too low. Only when his strength is on par with the lords of the 8 heavens will he be qualified to know the real secrets of the 8 heavens. At that time, the mysterious veil of the 9th heaven will be unveiled by him. Half a year later, the flower-like flying divine artifact finally stopped. Zhuowen heard the movement in the cabin, opened the hatch, and walked out. On the deck, Palace Master Jing Yun, Yao Xiangjuan, Zhu Rui, and the others had already gathered. Seeing Zhuowen coming out, Yao Xiangjuan greeted him with a smile. "Brother Zhuowen, we are here." Zhuowen nodded and immediately reminded her. "Miss Yao, my name is Longwen now, I hope you won't expose me." Yao Xiangjuan's cheeks blushed. She rolled her eyes at Zhuowen and had to change her words. "Brother Long, I was wrong just now." Chapter 2439. The familiar sound of a zither. A gigantic star field appeared in the starry sky ahead. This star field was much larger and more majestic than the pill furnace star field. The dazzling starlight was even more dazzling than lightning, and it covered every corner of the star field. This star region was even much larger and grander than the grand clarity, immortal domain that Zhuowen had seen all those years ago. Even if Zhuowen was experienced and knowledgeable, he still revealed a trace of a dumbstruck expression when he saw this star region for the first time. This is the 6 Desires star field, the core area of the 6 Desires heavenly domain. It is also the residence of my 6 Desires palace. Palace Master Jing Yun noticed Zhuowen, who was in a daze, and a proud smile appeared on her face. The 6 Desires palace is still in the 6 Desires star field. Let's continue forward. After saying that, Palace Lord Jing Yun continued to drive the flying divine artifact and flew towards the interior of the star field. Soon, they landed in a huge cluster of buildings in the core of the star field. This cluster of buildings was directly suspended in the starry sky. Colorful clouds floated below the buildings as if these clouds were supporting the buildings. Among the buildings, the most eye-catching and the tallest were the 6 palaces. These 6 palaces stood out among the countless buildings like cranes in a flock of chickens. At the top of the 6 palaces were engraved the words desire, 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 desire. Zhuowen knew that these 6 palaces should be the palaces of the 6 palace lords of the 6 Desires Palace. Palace Lord Jing Yun was the master of the Desire Palace, so she arrived at the Desire Palace first. Outside the Desire Palace, there were 2 stern-looking guards. These 2 guards were also disciples of the Desire Palace who had lost their vision. The 2 guards obviously recognized Palace Lord Jing Yun and hurriedly knelt on the ground to greet her. They said respectfully, "Welcome back, Palace Lord." Palace Lord Jing Yun put away the flying divine artifact and ignored the 2 guards. She directly led Zhuowen and the others into the Desire Palace. "Chun-Ro, arrange a room for Zhuowen first. Xiangjuan and I need to go to the Desire Palace first." After giving the order, Palace Lord Jing Yun hurriedly left the Desire Palace with Yao Xiangjuan. Zhuowen looked puzzled. Palace Lord Jing Yun seemed to be in a hurry. It seemed that there was indeed an urgent matter this time. "Brother Long, I'll take my leave first. If you need anything, you can look for me at the Desire Palace. I'm a disciple of the Desire Palace." Zhu Rui smiled at Zhuowen and left the Desire Palace. "Brother Long, come with me. I'll arrange a room for you." The female disciple called Chun Ro said respectfully to Zhuowen. Chun Ro was one of the female disciples by Palace Master Jing Yun's side. Although Zhuowen didn't have much contact with her, he knew that Chun Ro's character was very good. Furthermore, she was very grateful to Zhuowen for saving them. After agreeing, Chun Ro arranged for Zhuowen to stay in a good room. After Chun Ro respectfully left, Zhuowen sat on the bed and quietly thought about what to do next. His main purpose in staying in the Six Desires heavenly realm was to find Moyan Wushang. Since Moyan Wushang wasn't in the Six Desires palace, Zhuowen didn't plan to stay here for long. After he used the Six Desires heavenly lake and smoothly advanced to the 8 steps void sky, he would bid farewell to Palace Lord Jingyun and leave the Six Desires palace. After a while, the gentle sound of a zither came faintly from outside the window. The zither sound carried a helpless and sorrowful tune. It made people feel like crying. The moment he heard the zither sound, Zhuowen jumped up from the bed and immediately opened the door. He discovered that the zither sound came from outside the Desire Palace. At this moment, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with excitement. He was all too familiar with the tune because it was called A Male Phoenix Courting a Female Phoenix. When Moyan Wushang parted with him, the last song he played for him was A Male Phoenix Courting a Female Phoenix. Although Zhuowen had only heard it once, he had already firmly remembered it in his heart. Now that he heard it again, he immediately thought of Moyan Wushang. Wushang, Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. He followed the zither sound and rushed out of the Desire Palace. The guards outside the Desire Palace didn't stop Zhuowen. Previously, when Zhuowen came in with Palace Lord Jingyun, they clearly saw that he was an honored guest of Palace Lord Jingyun. The Six Desires Palace was extremely vast, and the zither sound came from the front of the Six Desires Palace. When Zhuowen arrived at the source of the sound, he discovered that the zither sound came from a large and beautiful garden. There were many exotic flowers and herbs planted in the garden. In the center of the garden stood an extremely gorgeous white jade pavilion. At this moment, a graceful woman in white was sitting cross-legged in the pavilion. On the stone table in front of her, there was a zither carved from 10,000 years old mahogany. The woman in white's slender hands slowly plucked the strings of the zither. The sad and melancholic sound of the zither was like flowing water, slowly sounding in the garden. Many figures had gathered around the pavilion, and they were all silently listening to the sorrowful sound of the zither. The moment Zhuowen's gaze fell on the woman in white, his brows suddenly wrinkled. This woman in white was completely different from the figure he had imagined. The woman in white had red lips and white teeth. Although she wasn't a stunning beauty, she gave people a feeling of calmness and elegance. Looking at the woman in white was like looking at a pure and flawless white lotus, giving people a comfortable feeling. However, the woman in white gave Zhuowen a strange feeling. It was the first time he had seen this woman, and he was sure that this woman was definitely not Moyan Wushang. However, the way this woman played the zither and the tune of A Male Phoenix Seeking a Female Phoenix was exactly the same as Moyan Wushang's. This made Zhuowen have no choice but to overlap the two. What is going on? Zhuowen's eyes had a touch of disappointment. He slowly walked into the pavilion, silently listening to the tune of A Male Phoenix Seeking a Female Phoenix, but he couldn't help but shed a tear. The scene of Moyan Wushang's departure, under the influence of A Male Phoenix Seeking a Female Phoenix, all appeared in his mind, making Zhuowen have mixed feelings. When the tune of A Male Phoenix Seeking a Female Phoenix gradually came to an end, Zhuowen had a strong impulse in his heart. He wanted to ask the woman in white in front of him where she learned this song. Thinking of this, Zhuowen suddenly jumped out and rushed to the top of the pavilion. The moment Zhuowen leaped out, an enchanting man below the pavilion twisted his slender waist as he also leaped onto the pavilion. Junior Sister Qilan, your zither sound is really getting more and more beautiful. I didn't notice it before, but now I know that you are really a musical genius. I can't help but cry when I hear this song. the enchanting man said as he sadly wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes. His voice was full of sorrow. Chapter 2440. Clue. The woman in white stared blankly at the strange man in front of her. She did not expect this man to be so bold. Not only did he jump into the pavilion without any warning, but he also kicked the enchanting man away. Although the enchanting man's behavior was disgusting, his status in the Six Desires Palace was not low. He was the eldest disciple of the Incense Desire Palace. His name was Tan Kai, and he was an influential figure in the Six Desires Palace. However, the woman in white did not dare to underestimate the man who suddenly appeared in front of her. This man was not weak since he could kick Tan Kai away. Although Tan Kai was not on guard, he was not weak. Even if he was not on guard, it would not be so easy for others to kick him away. The crowd below the pavilion fell into a long silence. Their eyes shifted between Zhuowen, who was on the pavilion, and Tan Kai, who was standing awkwardly below. They were all trying to guess the identity of this strange man. It was the first time they had seen someone who dared to ignore Tan Kai in the Six Desires Palace. Even the woman in white who was playing the zither in the pavilion did not dare to confront Tan Kai. That was why she made such a big fuss. Whispers were constantly heard below the pavilion. Tan Kai, who was not far away, was so angry that his face turned green and white. His eyes were as gloomy as dark clouds. Where did this reckless guy come from? How dare you be so presumptuous here? You are courting death. Tan Kai snorted coldly and stomped his feet on the ground like a young girl in a fit of pique. If an ordinary beautiful girl did this, it would be pleasing to the eye. However, if it was a man like Tan Kai, it would make people feel nauseous and speechless. It seems that senior brother Tan Kai is really angry. This person is going to be unlucky. This person is also reckless. I don't know where this person came from. I have never seen this person before. The crowd below the pavilion was already used to Tan Kai's strange behavior. They did not feel that there was anything wrong with Tan Kai's actions. Instead, they were all talking about Zhuowen, who had appeared on the pavilion out of nowhere. Zhuowen didn't pay any attention to He Kai at all. Instead, he looked at the woman in white seriously and asked word by word, "Where did you learn this song?" The white-clothed woman's beautiful eyes were startled. She thought that the man in front of her was the same as Tan Kai, here to find fault with her. She didn't expect that he was only here to ask about the origin of the song she played. "Bastard, how dare you ignore me?" Behind him, when Tan Kai saw Zhuowen's indifferent appearance, he coldly snorted and directly attacked Zhuowen's back. A trace of impatience appeared in Zhuowen's eyes. He suddenly threw a punch behind him, colliding with Tan Kai's palm. Soon after, the fist and palm intertwined and a terrifying gale swept out. Soon after, everyone was shocked to discover that Tan Kai had directly fallen with a miserable shriek, heavily smashing into the ground not far away. His figure was in a sorry state. Although Tan Kai's strength was not bad, his cultivation was only around the middle stage void sky 8th step. This kind of cultivation was really nothing much in Zhuowen's eyes. Although Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the peak of the void sky 7th step, his strength was completely capable of defeating cultivators below the void sky 9th step. The white-clothed woman looked at this scene in surprise. Then, she seriously sized up the unfamiliar man in front of her. On the surface, this man's cultivation was only at the peak of the void sky 7th step, but he was actually able to send Tan Kai flying so easily. This person's strength was not simple. As for the cultivators below the pavilion, they were all dumbstruck. Obviously, they did not expect Tan Kai to be defeated so easily. This was too fast. "Ah! You bastard, I'm going to kill you, you bastard!" Tan Kai let out a sharp scream and immediately took out the illusory heavenly bridge. Terrifying divine power surged out, looking extremely mighty and unyielding. Everyone below the pavilion revealed a look of fear. They knew that Tan Kai was truly angry. This time, he was serious. Tan Kai, who had taken out the illusory heavenly bridge, did not care whether the garden's restrictions could withstand it or not. He suddenly rushed towards Zhuowen. The white-clothed woman's beautiful face changed slightly. She could not help but say, "Tan Kai, this is my garden. Do you want to destroy my garden?" At this moment, how could Tan Kai listen to the white-clothed woman's words? His mind was already filled with rage. Right now, he only wanted to teach the white-clothed youth a lesson and make this arrogant man kneel down and beg for mercy. However, before Tan Kai could even get close to the pavilion, a mountain-like black shadow suddenly descended above his head and ruthlessly pressed down on him. Tan Kai's expression changed greatly. He immediately took out the illusory heavenly bridge to block the black shadow. Unfortunately, the illusory heavenly bridge was sent flying by the black shadow, directly smashing Tan Kai into the soft soil under his feet. The others who had originally planned to leave the garden were all dumbstruck. They had originally thought that Tan Kai, who had used all his strength, would at least be able to fight a fierce battle with this unfamiliar man. However, the truth was like a ruthless slap to their faces. How was this the fierce battle they had anticipated? It was simply a crushing defeat. "So noisy," Zhuowen said impatiently. Soon after, he looked at the white-clothed woman who was in a daze in front of him and said again, "You haven't answered me yet." The white-clothed woman looked at Zhuowen with fear and said in a deep voice, "I learned this song by myself. No one taught me." "Then you can't have learned this song for no reason. You must have heard it somewhere. Tell me," Zhuowen asked closely. The white-clothed woman frowned slightly and said coldly, "I can't tell you this. Where I learned this song has nothing to do with you, right? Could it be that you want to extort a confession from me by torture?" Zhuowen frowned slightly, but did not make a move. Instead, he cupped his hands and said apologetically, "Miss, I was impulsive just now. The reason why I acted like this was because the song you played was exactly the same as the one played by a very important friend of mine. So when I saw it, I thought of it." Seeing that Zhuowen's attitude had become modest, the white-clothed woman's expression eased a lot. She said lightly, "My friend, I really can't tell you the origin of this song. I once promised the player that this song would never be related to her. Even if someone asks, I won't tell you." Zhuowen nodded and did not continue to ask. Instead, he calmed down. Since he had heard, a male phoenix seeking a female phoenix, in the Six Desires Palace, it meant that Moyan Wushang had probably been to the Six Desires Palace before. However, I can give you a reminder. The real player is still in the Six Desires Palace. However, I can't tell you where he is." As the white-clothed woman said this, she looked at Zhuowen with a trace of pity and sighed. Zhuowen also saw the trace of pity in the white-clothed woman's eyes. He felt a little strange. Obviously, he did not know why the white-clothed woman had such an expression. Chapter 2441. Qi Lanzhuan wondered why Palace Master Jingyun and Yao Xiangjuan said they had never heard of Moyan Wushang. Changed his name. Zhuowen quickly thought of the details. Moyan Wushang must have changed his name after joining the Six Desires Palace. That was why Palace Master Jingyun and Yao Xiangjuan said they had never heard of him. Zhuowen believed Palace Master Jingyun and Yao Xiangjuan. He knew that they had no reason to lie to him about Moyan Wushang. By the way, Tan Kai is the eldest disciple of the Fragrant Desire Palace. You better not mess around and let him out. Otherwise, you will be in trouble." The white-clothed woman looked at Tan Kai, who was suppressed by the phagocytosis and lying on the ground with only his head exposed, and said indifferently. Zhuowen nodded. With a wave of his sleeve, he put away the devouring seal. Tan Kai, on the other hand, staggered out of the ground in a sorry state. He then looked at Zhuowen with fear in his eyes. The white-clothed youth in front of him looked young, but he was so strong. Tan Kai thought that Zhuowen was an old monster who came to the Six Desires Palace as a guest, so he was afraid of him. "Junior Qilan, I still have some things to do, so I will leave first." Tan Kai cupped his hands and said to Qilan. Qilan smiled and said, Senior Tan Kai, if you have something to do, you can leave first. I won't see you off. Tan Kai didn't respond to Qilan's words, but hurriedly left the garden. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He was secretly vigilant against Tan Kai. Just now, he made such a big fool of Tan Kai. He was afraid that Tan Kai wouldn't let it go so easily. Qilan seemed to have read Zhuowen's mind and said with a smile, Senior apprentice brother, don't worry. The Six Desires Palace doesn't forbid fighting. Sparring between each other can be found everywhere. If you lose to an enemy, as long as no one dies, the 6 great palace masters won't care. And I know Tan Kai's character. Although he is a little pretentious, he is also a person who can afford to lose. He will only go back and reflect, not think about how to deal with you. Zhuowen's eyes were strange. He didn't expect Qilan to say this. If what Qilan said was true, then his worries were indeed unnecessary. Moreover, after Tan Kai left, except for the fear in his eyes, there was no other emotion. Thinking of this, Zhuowen found that the atmosphere among the disciples of the Six Desires Palace was good. At least, it was much better than the so-called 10 sects in the Great Brahma domain. By the way, this senior brother looks unfamiliar. I wonder which palace's disciple? At this moment, everyone else in the garden had left as well. Only Zhuowen and the white-clothed woman remained. Zhuowen didn't stand on ceremony. He sat opposite the white-clothed woman and said, I am Long One. I am not from the Six Desires Palace. I came with Palace Master Jing Yun. My purpose is to use the Six Desires Heavenly Lake to break through my current bottleneck. The white-clothed woman looked at Zhuowen strangely and said in a deep voice, You were brought here by Martial Ant Jing Yun? And you plan to use the Six Desires Heavenly Lake? Is there a problem? Zhuowen looked at the white-clothed woman in surprise and asked. The white-clothed woman shook her head and said, The Six Desires Heavenly Lake is a very important place in the Six Desires Palace. Even the most outstanding disciple of the Six Desires Palace may not be qualified to soak in the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. You are an outsider after all, so, can't I be guaranteed by Palace Master Jing Yun? Zhuowen had a bad feeling. This would have worked half a year ago. However, ever since the Palace Master of the Desire Palace came out of seclusion, the requirements have become extremely strict. Anyone who wants to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake must pass the necessary test. Otherwise, even the genius disciples of the Six Desires Palace can forget about entering. As for the people recommended by the other palace masters, they basically have no chance, the white-clothed woman said. Zhuowen's face was a little ugly. He thought that he would definitely be able to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake this time. He didn't expect such an unforeseen event to happen. This was really an unexpected disaster. Thank you for your reminder. May I know your name? Zhuowen cupped his fists at the white-clothed woman. The white-clothed woman smiled and said, My name is Qilan. I am the eldest disciple of the Desire Palace. I still have to thank Brother Long for appearing and driving away that annoying guy, Tan Kai. Zhuowen waved his hand. He didn't mean it. By the way, can I have the honor of meeting the real person who played the song? After chatting for a while, Zhuowen continued to ask. Qilan's pretty face froze. She immediately said seriously, Brother Long, I see that you are a good person. I think it's best if you don't get involved in this matter. Otherwise, you will be in trouble. I won't tell you about the person who played the song. This matter is not only related to your safety, but also my safety. I hope Brother Long can forgive me. Zhuowen frowned. He began to realize that something was wrong. From Qilan's words, he could tell that the real person who played the song was in a bad situation. Although Zhuowen was very anxious, he didn't lose his calm. Since Qilan said it was so serious, it was obvious that things weren't so simple. Moreover, if he revealed too much of his emotions, he was afraid that Qilan would be suspicious. Although Qi Lan didn't seem to have a bad temperament after all, this was the first time he and Qi Lan met. Naturally, he couldn't say too many important things. I was just curious. Since Miss Qi Lan can't say more, I won't ask any more. This Long will take his leave first. Zhuowen cupped his fists towards Qi Lan, got up and left. Qi Lan looked at Zhuowen's departing back, and her beautiful eyes revealed a strange look. After returning to the Desire Palace, Palace Master Jing Yun and Yao Xiangjuan had already returned. However, both of them didn't look good. Zhuowen, where did you go? Palace Master Jing Yun saw Zhuowen, and her complexion eased a little. Oh, I went out for a stroll. Palace Master, I saw that your complexion didn't look good. Could it be that something happened? Zhuowen asked. Palace Master Jing Yun sighed softly. Her face revealed a guilty look, but she didn't say anything. My master came out of seclusion, and he even made a bold and decisive move to reorganize the Six Desires Palace. Originally, Martial Ant had already recommended you to my master to go to the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, but my master, Yao Xiangjuan said with some difficulty. Zhuowen smiled slightly. He had already heard about this from Qi Lan, so he didn't blame Palace Master Jing Yun. After all, the Six Desires Palace was still dominated by the Desire Palace. Zhuowen, I'm really sorry. Previously, I promised you that I would let you enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, but now I have to break my promise. Palace Master Jing Yun said with some embarrassment. Zhuowen smiled and said, It's okay. Since I can't enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, then forget it. I don't have to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Chapter 2442. Palace Master Wu Ju Test? What kind of test is it? Zhuowen had heard about the test from Qi Lan, but he didn't know what it was. Although he said it was fine, he still felt it was a pity to waste the chance to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. I'm not too sure about the test. It's hosted by the Palace Master of Desire. You'll know when you enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Palace Master Jing Yun said. When will the Six Desires Heavenly Lake open? Zhuowen asked. Soon, there is only half a month left. When the time comes, I will take you to the Palace of Desire. Moreover, the other 5 palaces will also select several outstanding disciples to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake for the test. When the time comes, I will give one of the spots to you. Palace Master Jing Yun said. Hearing this, Zhuowen cupped his fist and thanked Palace Master Jing Yun. Thank you for your concern, Palace Master. For the next period of time, Zhuowen basically stayed in the room arranged by Palace Master Jing Yun. At the same time, he occasionally went out to inquire about the song, A Male Phoenix Seeking a Female Phoenix. But what made him helpless was that other than listening to A Male Phoenix Seeking a Female Phoenix in Qi Lan's garden, he didn't have any other clues. Zhuowen also placed his hopes on the opening of the Six Desires Heavenly Lake in half a month. He believed that with Moyan Wushang's talent, he would definitely become the focus of attention in the Six Desires Palace. When the Six Desires Heavenly Lake opens, Moyan Wushang should also participate. At that time, he might be able to meet Moyan Wushang. Half a month later, the Six Desires Palace was very lively. Many disciples of the Six Desires Palace gathered in the huge square outside the Palace of Desire. They all knew that the entrance to the Six Desires Heavenly Lake was about to open. Although most of them didn't have the qualifications to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, there were geniuses representing their palaces. They were also here to cheer. I didn't expect the rules of the Six Desires Heavenly Lake to change. There's actually a test to enter. This time, each palace only has 2 spots. I think Senior Yao Xiangjuan and Senior Yun Maozhe from the Palace of Desire can pass the test. Senior Qi Lan from the Palace of Desire is not weak. She also has a good chance. Humph. Have you forgotten about Senior Tan Kai from the palace? He's also a very good competitor. Many disciples gathered outside the square of the Palace of Desire were excitedly discussing the test of the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. There were also many disciples who regretted that they did not have the qualifications to participate in this test. They all wanted to work hard so that they could participate in this test in the future and enter the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake in one go. Time passed slowly amidst the discussions of many disciples. Soon, streams of light swept over from the other 5 palaces and appeared in the center of the square. 5 streams of light appeared in the middle of the square, attracting everyone's attention. These 5 streams of light were the disciples of the other 5 palaces who had obtained the quotas, excluding the Palace of Will. Zhuowen stood behind Palace Master Jingyun. Beside him was another female disciple of the Desire Palace. Her name was Yuan He, and she was the eldest disciple of the Desire Palace. Her cultivation was around the middle stage of the Void Sky 8th step. However, this Yuan He was quite fond of Zhuowen. His gaze towards Zhuowen was always filled with disdain and contempt. Zhuowen knew why Yuan He had such an expression. It was mainly because he, an outsider, had snatched a quota from the Desire Palace. Moreover, his cultivation was only at the peak of the Void Sky 7th step. Therefore, Yuan He was very unhappy with him. Other than Yuan He, there were a few other disciples of the Desire Palace who had reached the Void Sky 8th step. However, Zhuowen's arrival directly occupied one of the quotas. Yuan He, the eldest senior sister, was naturally unhappy with this outsider who had snatched the quotas of the other junior sisters. Zhuowen was too lazy to pay attention to Yuan He's gaze. Instead, he looked at the other 4 palace masters with interest. Palace Master Jingyun had already told him about the 6 palace masters of the 6 Desires Palace. Therefore, he basically knew the 4 palace masters. The 6 palace masters of the 6 Desires Palace were all women. At this moment, Zhuowen's gaze fell on the Fragrant Desire Palace. The palace master of the Fragrant Desire Palace was called Xiang Lan. She was a charming young woman with an extremely hot figure. The reason why his gaze fell on the Fragrant Desire Palace was because he saw an acquaintance there. One of the 2 people standing behind Palace Master Xiang Lan was naturally talkative. However, Zhuowen found that the other person was actually his acquaintance, Zhu Rui. Zhu Rui had previously said that she was a disciple of the Fragrant Desire Palace. However, her cultivation was not high and her talent was ordinary. It was basically impossible for her to be selected to participate in the test. Perhaps feeling Zhuowen's gaze, Zhu Rui glanced at Zhuowen and quickly lowered her head. There was a trace of helplessness in her eyes. On the contrary, it was Tan Kai who grinned and met Zhuowen's eyes without the slightest scruple. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. Over the past half a month, Tan Kai had indeed not come looking for revenge. Zhuowen had thought that Tan Kai was as magnanimous as Qi Lan had said. However, he did not expect that this fellow had actually come looking for Zhu Rui. Obviously, Tan Kai knew that Zhu Rui had some relationship with him. Therefore, he forcibly called Zhu Rui to participate in the test. As for Zhuowen, he did not know what this guy was planning. In addition, he also saw Qi Lan in the Tingyu Palace team. When Zhuowen's gaze was cast, the latter smiled slightly and greeted him. Just as the disciples of the 5 major palaces were looking at each other, footsteps came from the Tingyu Palace. Immediately, 3 figures walked out. The person in the lead was a Taoist nun dressed in a flawless white robe, and her hair was tied up in a bun. The Taoist nun held a horsetail whisk in her hand. She was spotless, like a white lotus that appeared in front of everyone, giving them a refreshing feeling. Although the Taoist nun's appearance could only be regarded as ordinary, her temperament added an indescribable beauty to her. Many disciples in the square were stunned by her. This white-robed Taoist nun was the palace master of the Tingyu Palace, Wu Ju. Because she was in seclusion all year round and did not come out for a long time, most of the disciples of the 6 Desires Palace had never seen her. Now that they saw her, they were indeed stunned. Even Zhuowen felt his eyes light up the moment he saw the Taoist nun. Behind Wu Ju was a man and a woman. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. They were simply a pair of golden boy and jade girl. The beautiful woman was naturally not unfamiliar to Zhuowen. She was Yao Xiangjuan. As for the handsome man, Zhuowen had never seen him before. This handsome man wore a purple robe and had long hair that draped over his shoulders. He had a demonic temperament. It's senior brother Yun Maozhe. I haven't seen him for a long time. Senior brother Yun Maozhe is still so extraordinary and handsome. The moment this handsome man appeared, Zhuowen speechlessly heard many infatuated female cultivators around the plaza shouting extremely shameful names and words, causing Zhuowen to be extremely speechless in his heart. Chapter 2443. Desireless, Yun Maozhe still likes to be in the limelight. Tan Kai muttered to himself, looking a little unhappy. At this moment, Yun Maozhe's gaze landed on Yao Xiangjuan, who was beside him. He thought that his attire today would attract her attention, but he didn't expect that Yao Xiangjuan didn't even look at him. Instead, her beautiful eyes landed on Palace Master Jing Yun. Yun Maozhe frowned slightly. Ever since Yao Xiangjuan came back, he felt strange. Back then, he and Yao Xiangjuan were the most outstanding disciples of the Desire Palace. Their relationship wasn't bad. Although they weren't Dao companions, they were quite close. Back then, the two of them were the Golden Boy and Jade Girl that the disciples of the Six Desires Palace thought would become Dao companions. However, ever since Yao Xiangjuan came back, she was cold to him. Usually, they would only speak a few words. Yun Maozhe followed Yao Xiangjuan's gaze and landed on Palace Master Jing Yun's side. He immediately saw Zhuowen standing behind Palace Master Jing Yun in white. Yun Maozhe had heard about this white-clothed young man. It was said that this young man saved Palace Master Jing Yun's life in the Divine Pill Secret Realm. In order to repay this young man, Palace Master Jing Yun had suggested to Wu Ju to let this young man enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. However, Wu Ju rejected her. Now that this young man was here, it seemed like he wanted to let this young man participate in the test. It seems like Junior's sister has been bewitched by this little bastard? Yun Maozhe saw Yao Xiangjuan's gaze fall on Zhuowen from time to time. His face was a little gloomy, and his gaze towards Zhuowen was a little unfriendly. Zhuowen also noticed Yao Xiangjuan's gaze. He nodded at Yao Xiangjuan symbolically. Just as he was about to withdraw his gaze, he felt an unusual gaze. Then, he looked at Yun Maozhe's unfriendly gaze on the other side of Wu Ju. He revealed a pondering look. He could roughly guess why Yun Maozhe was hostile towards him. After Wu Ju arrived, the other 5 palace masters cupped their hands and greeted him. Wu Ju nodded and glanced at Zhuowen, but he did not say anything. The 5 of you, I changed the rules of the Six Desires Heavenly Lake without permission. The 5 of you won't have any objections, right? Wu Ju said calmly. Although Wu Ju's words were for discussion, his tone was unquestionable. As long as it is a decision made by Palace Master Wu Ju, we will naturally not have any objections. Xiang Lan, the Palace Master of Xiang Desire Palace, said with a smile. The other Palace Masters also cupped their hands in acknowledgement. Although Palace Master Jing Yun was a little dissatisfied, the current situation was irresistible, so she couldn't say anything. She only gave Zhuowen an apologetic look. Zhuowen smiled faintly, indicating that Palace Master Jing Yun did not need to take it to heart. Since no one has any objections, I will cut to the chase. In the future, the qualifications to enter the Six Desires Heavenly Lake will be the same. Regardless of whether it is a disciple of the Six Desires Palace, an elder or a palace master, if you want to enter, you will have to pass a test, Wu Ju said faintly. Palace Master Wu Ju, what is this test? Palace Master Jing Yun could not help but ask. Wu Ju smiled and waved his sleeve. A slender figure slowly walked out from the dark door of the Yi Palace. This slender figure was graceful and graceful. Just by looking at her figure, one could tell that this woman was definitely a beautiful woman. It was a pity that this woman was not wearing a luxurious dress. Instead, she was wearing an old hemp garment. She was barefooted as she slowly walked out. The moment this woman finally appeared in front of everyone, the square suddenly quieted down. There were even some disciples who revealed a look of horror. Even Zhuowen frowned when he saw this woman who appeared from the door of the Yi Palace. He revealed a trace of horror. This woman in hemp garment had a slender figure and a perfect body. However, she did not have a face. Her face did not have any facial features. She did not have eyes, nose, mouth, or ears. She did not even have hair. Of course, if one looked carefully, this woman's eyes and mouth were sewn together with thin thread. Her nose and ears were cut off. However, the treatment was too seamless. Hence, at first glance, she looked like a faceless person. The moment Zhuowen saw this woman, a burst of anger appeared in his chest. Although he did not know this woman, it was too cruel to treat a woman like this. Palace Master Jingyun, how can your Six Desires Palace be so cruel to torture a woman like this? Zhuowen questioned Palace Master Jingyun coldly. Palace Master Jingyun frowned slightly. Before she could speak, Yuan He, who was behind her, retorted, "What an ignorant guy. You don't even know who this person is and you dare to question the Palace Master. What right do you have to question the Palace Master? Let me tell you, this woman is a desireless one. In order to cultivate the desireless cultivation method of the Six Desires Palace, she cut off the feeling of six desires on her own in order to cultivate the desireless cultivation method to great success. You are really capable to use this to accuse the Palace Master." Yuan He jabbered on endlessly, ridiculing Zhuowen from top to bottom. Originally, Yuan He was already very unhappy that Zhuowen had snatched a spot in the Desire Palace. Now that she had the opportunity, she naturally would not let Zhuowen go. "Yuan He, that's enough. This is Longwen's first time in the Six Desires Palace, so it's reasonable that he doesn't know this." After Palace Master Jingyun spoke, the chattering Yuan He could only shut up helplessly. However, she looked at Zhuowen with eyes full of dissatisfaction. Zhuowen could not be bothered with Yuan He. Instead, he looked at Palace Master Jingyun as if he was waiting for her explanation. Palace Master Jingyun nodded at Zhuowen and said, "Yuan He is right. She is indeed the second desireless one in countless years in the Six Desires Palace. She also cultivates the supreme cultivation method of the Six Desires Palace, the desireless cultivation method." "What is her name? Why is she the second?" "From what you said, the desireless cultivation method is very powerful. Why don't the other cultivators of the Six Desires Palace cultivate this cultivation method?" Zhuowen's expression softened as he asked curiously. You can also see that the cultivation method of the Six Desires Palace is divided according to the six desires of the seven emotions and six desires of the mortal world. For example, the cultivation method of the Desire Palace must be cut off from the desires before starting to cultivate. The same is true for the other 5 palaces. Among them, the cultivation method of the Desire Palace is the most powerful. Palace Master Jingyun sighed softly and said, "In fact, our Six Desires Palace has another cultivation method. This cultivation method is above the cultivation method of the other 6 palaces. It is the desireless cultivation method. The first-generation ancestor who founded the Six Desires Palace cultivated the desireless cultivation method and became a desireless one. He finally succeeded in reaching the Tao realm and later left the 8 heavens." Palace Master Jingyun didn't say the following words. Zhuowen didn't need to think to know that the first-generation palace master of the Six Desires Palace should have gone to the 9th heaven. Chapter 2444. Six Desires Hell. Your Six Desires Palace has been established for such a long time, yet this is the second desireless person to appear. Could it be that none of you can practice the desireless cultivation technique? Zhuowen asked doubtfully. Palace Master Jingyun said in a self-deprecating manner. Long One, you might not know this, but the requirements to practice the desireless cultivation technique are very high. Many past palace masters have tried to practice the desireless cultivation technique, but after they severed their 5 senses, they died before they could even reach the entry level of the desireless cultivation technique. No one has ever succeeded in becoming a desireless person. You should know that if you want to become a desireless person, you must be able to practice the desireless cultivation technique. Otherwise, you'll be a cripple. In addition, not everyone has the courage to sever their 5 senses, because that's really no different from being a cripple. Hearing this, Zhuowen's expression changed. Palace Master Jingyun was right. How frightening was it to lose one's 5 senses? Without sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, one would lose any joy of being a human. It was very frightening. Zhuowen only had to think about it to know how lonely that feeling was. Thinking of this, Zhuowen looked at desireless person with admiration. This person was willing to become a desireless person, so he must be a person with a firm will. What's the name of this desireless person? Zhuowen suddenly asked. She's called Wang Yan, and she was brought here by Palace Master Wujue. Speaking of which, this desireless person hasn't been in the 6 Desires Palace for a long time, but he directly practiced the desireless cultivation technique. I really admire this, Palace Master Jingyun said in admiration. Zhuowen nodded, but didn't ask much. Although he was shocked by this desireless person in the beginning, he felt much more at ease after hearing Palace Master Jingyun's explanation. Palace Master Wujue, is the test related to desireless person? Palace Master Xianglan asked doubtfully. Palace Master Wujue said with a smile, yes, desireless person can summon the 6 desires hell. As long as he can persist in the 6 desires hell for half an incense stick's time, he will obtain the qualifications to enter the 6 desires heavenly lake. He can actually summon the 6 desires hell? This desireless person's cultivation speed is really fast, Palace Master Jingyun said with her beautiful eyes narrowed. Zhuowen looked at Palace Master Jingyun in confusion and asked, what is the 6 desires hell? Palace Lord Jingyun calmed down and explained, the hell of 6 desires is a hell that deprives you of your 6 desires. Once you enter this hell, your 6 desires will be slowly stripped away. Moreover, the pain of deprivation is very real. This kind of pain isn't physical, it's on the level of the soul. This kind of pain is very difficult for ordinary people to endure. Not only Palace Master Jingyun, but the other palace masters were also shocked, and their faces turned ugly. If the 5 palace masters don't have any objections, I'll have Desireless summon the 6 desires hell now. Although Palace Master Wujue still used the same inquiring tone, she didn't wait for the 5 palace masters to answer and formed a seal. The body of Desireless, who had walked out, trembled. Immediately after, he let out a sharp howl and extended his right hand. Kneeling on one knee, he slapped the ground with his right hand. Soon after, Zhuowen felt a terrifying and unknown power gushing out from the depths of the ground. Soon after, he noticed a shadow rising from the ground. This shadow had 6 steps. At the bottom of the steps, raging black flames were burning. There were also countless figures swaying and struggling unceasingly. It was as if the bottom of the steps was an endless and terrifying hell. This time, the 12 people who intend to enter the 6 desires heavenly lake must stay on the steps for half the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Oh right, I have to remind you that the higher you go on the steps, the more painful it will be. It's best to act according to your capabilities, Palace Master Wujue said indifferently. Zhuowen's expression changed. He understood Palace Master Wujue's meaning. Her requirement was that they just had to stay on the steps for half the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, no matter which step they were on. Moreover, with Palace Master Wujue's reminder, the rest of the people would definitely stay on the last step. However, from Zhuowen's point of view, Each step could only accommodate 2 people. In other words, only 2 people could stand on the last step. The rest of the people would be forced to enter the next step. Zhuowen knew that the 12 people would definitely have to fight in order to obtain the best position. However, Palace Master Wujue had already planned for this. The eyes of the 12 disciples standing behind their respective palace masters flickered. Clearly, they had guessed the hidden condition of Palace Master Wujue. Clearly, it wasn't as simple as staying on the steps for half the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Let's start now. Those who seize the first opportunity will have more opportunities. As for these opportunities, you will have to fight for them yourselves. After Palace Master Wujue finished speaking, the 11 disciples standing behind the 6 great palace masters flew out and stepped onto the steps. Only Zhuowen was still standing behind Palace Master Jingyun, not moving in the slightest. The other disciples surrounding the plaza immediately became noisy. They were all cheering for their senior brothers and sisters from their respective palaces. Look, did that brat from the Desire Palace turn stupid? He's actually not moving at all. Is he so scared that he can't even walk? Don't talk nonsense. That's not a disciple of the Desire Palace. It's said that he's an outsider. I don't know how he got in through the back door of the Desire Palace, but he got Palace Master Jingyun to get him a place in the test. TSK, he's actually an opportunistic guy. He doesn't have the ability, but he still needs to rely on connections to make a fool of himself. Zhuowen, who was standing motionlessly beside Palace Master Jingyun, immediately attracted the attention of many disciples around him. Following that, a series of mocking voices could be heard. As for those disciples who originally wanted to cheer for the Desire Palace, they all lowered their heads in shame. They felt that letting Zhuowen take the test on behalf of the Desire Palace was simply a disgrace. They also had no face to cheer for him. Long One, you're not going to make a move? Palace Master Jingyun was surprised to see Zhuowen not moving. Zhuowen, however, said calmly, I'm really not interested in the fight between a group of juniors. I'll go up after they're done fighting. When Palace Master Jingyun heard this, she was a little speechless. She thought to herself, you're not that old, right? You actually called Yao Xiangjuan and the others juniors. With Palace Master Jingyun's cultivation and realm, she could naturally see that Zhuowen's bone age was not that old. He was even younger than any of the disciples present. It could be seen that this child's talent was too strong. However, Palace Master Jingyun was very clear about Zhuowen's strength. If Zhuowen rushed up now, none of the other 11 people would be a match for him. Even Yao Xiangjuan and Yun Maozhe, who were the most favored, would not be a match for him. After all, in the eyes of Palace Master Jingyun, Zhuowen was an abnormal person who had defeated the Rakshasa king. Palace Master Jingyun, why is your candidate not moving at all? Is he afraid? Palace Master Feishan, who was closest to Palace Master Jingyun, looked at Zhuowen, who was standing behind Palace Master Jingyun with ill intentions, and said mockingly. Chapter 2445. Coward Palace Master Jingyun couldn't be bothered with the doubts of the other palace masters. She stood there calmly and didn't urge Zhuowen, nor did she say anything. The other palace masters didn't say anything after being snubbed, but there was a mocking smile on their faces. Obviously, they despised the cowardly behavior of Long One, who was chosen by Palace Master Jingyun. Palace Master Wu Ju glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and didn't say anything. Instead, she turned to look at the situation on the Hell of Six Desires. At this moment, Yun Maozhe was the first to reach the stairs. He was the first to land on the first step. The aura on his body suddenly erupted. Obviously, he was showing off to the others. The other 10 people knew Yun Maozhe's strength. Therefore, when Yun Maozhe reached the first step, they consciously avoided him. Yao Xiangjuan's strength wasn't any weaker than Yun Maozhe's. However, in order to take care of Zhu Rui, she fell behind. Zhu Rui looked at Yao Xiangjuan anxiously and hurriedly said, Senior sister, don't worry about me. Otherwise, you won't have any good spots to choose from later. Yao Xiangjuan shook her head and said, Junior Sister Zhu, although I don't know why your palace master wants you to participate in this test, if you rely on yourself, you won't be able to pass this test. In any case, we've gone through life and death together. Since you're with me, I naturally won't ignore you. Zhu Rui was touched and ashamed. She could only let Yao Xiangjuan lead her. The two women quickly reached the stairs of the Hell of Six Desires. Their speed wasn't fast. When they reached the stairs, there were already 4 people in front of them. Yun Maozhe naturally occupied the first step. He didn't even allow the other 3 to fight for the other half of the first step. He was extremely domineering. Although the other 3 were angry, they didn't attack Yun Maozhe. They knew very well that Yun Maozhe wasn't easy to deal with. Therefore, the 3 of them took a step back and fought for the 2 spots on the second step. Zhuowen was no stranger to these 3 people. They were Tan Kai from the Palace of Desire, Qi Lan from the Palace of Desire, and Yuan He from the Palace of Desire. The battle between the 3 of them was extremely intense. None of them were willing to back down. When Yao Xiangjuan and Zhu Rui arrived in front of the stairs, Yun Maozhe smiled at Yao Xiangjuan and said, Junior Sister Yao, I've already reserved this spot for you. You don't need to compete with them to avoid dirtying your hands. Yao Xiangjuan's long, shapely eyebrows slightly knitted as she looked at Yun Maozhe, whose gaze was blazing. She cupped her fists and said, Xiangjuan appreciates Senior Martial Brother Yun's good intentions, but Junior Martial Sister Zhu Rui and I need 2 spots, so Senior Martial Brother Yun won't leave any for me. After saying that, Yao Xiangjuan and Zhu Rui brushed past Yun Maozhe and headed for the 3rd platform. In the end, they occupied the 3rd platform. Since the 12 of them had not chosen their positions, the power of the Hell of Six Desires had not been fully released. Therefore, the people on the stairs did not feel the power that deprived them of their 6 desires. Yun Maozhe's face was gloomy. When he saw Yao Xiangjuan and Zhu Rui brushing past him, an inexplicable anger rose in his heart. However, he forcibly suppressed this anger. His unfriendly gaze fell on Zhuowen, who was not far away, who was still motionless. He's just a coward, Yun Maozhe said without the slightest hesitation. Although Yun Maozhe's words were without rhyme or reason, many people present knew that the person Yun Maozhe was talking about was none other than the white-clothed youth standing behind Palace Master Jing Yun. Zhuowen glanced at Yun Maozhe indifferently. In his heart, he drew a big cross for this guy. When he made his move later, he did not intend to show mercy to this guy. Bang! A miserable-looking figure fell from the second step outside. Everyone focused their eyes and realized that this miserable-looking figure was actually Yuan He from the Desire Palace. On the second platform, Tan Kai and Qi Lan looked down indifferently at the severely injured Yuan He. Soon after, they sat down cross-legged on the second platform, no longer paying attention to Yuan He, who looked dejected. The moment Yuan He was struck down, the 4th and 5th platforms were also snatched away by other disciples. In the end, only the 6th platform and the 1st platform beside Yun Maozhe were left. Yuan He's beautiful eyes were filled with dejection. She knew very well that her injuries were not light. She was probably no match for any one of the 10 people on the steps right now. Trying to snatch it from them was just asking to be humiliated. However, Yuan He was unwilling to go to the 6th platform just like that. She knew that the 6th platform was the closest to the Hell of Six Desires. When the Hell of Six Desires was activated, she would definitely be the first to bear the brunt. On the 6th platform, there was no need for half an incense stick to burn. Yuan He even thought that she would not be able to last 15 minutes. When she thought of this, Yuan He's beautiful eyes fell on Yun Maozhe, who was on the 1st platform. She gritted her teeth and walked over to Yun Maozhe. She cupped her hands in a rather humble manner and said, Senior Brother Yun, your position is also empty. Can you give it to me? Yun Maozhe glanced at Yuan He and smiled faintly. Junior Sister Yuan He, you're too courteous. If you want this position, what's wrong with giving it to you? It's just that I can't stand the other participant of the Palace of Desire. That fellow is standing there like an idiot. Do you think it's fair for you to fight here alone? Yuan He's expression was slightly unsightly. She glanced at Zhuowen, who was still motionless behind her, and snorted coldly. This person is an extremely cowardly coward. It's simply a waste for my palace master to give a spot to him. I don't expect this person to help me in any way. Yun Maozhi smiled faintly and said, Junior Sister Yuan He, actually, this coward is not completely useless. Ask him to get his ass over here. As long as he kneels before me and begs me to give up this position, I'll immediately give it to you. What do you think? Yuan He was stunned. Then, she cupped her fists and said rather happily, Then, thank you very much, Senior Brother Yun. After saying that, Yuan He rushed over to Zhuowen's side. In Yuan He's opinion, this boy did not even dare to fight for a position, so he was definitely a complete coward. Asking this coward to kneel before Yun Maozhi and beg for a position, this request was not excessive. And this coward could also be considered to have contributed to the Palace of Desire, so why not? So in Yuan He's heart, she felt that Zhuowen would definitely accept this proposal. Zhuowen had long heard the conversation between Yuan He and Yun Maozhi. He sneered repeatedly in his heart. But when Yuan He came before him, he still asked knowingly, Senior Sister Yuan He, why didn't you go and snatch it? Why did you come back again? Do you want to be a coward like me? Yuan He's face froze, revealing an angry look, and she snorted coldly, Do you think I'm you? What a good-for-nothing fellow. Now I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself. Now, go over and kneel before Yun Maozhi and beg for a position by his side. You just have to do that. Palace Master Jing Yun stood on the spot and did not stop her. She was clear that Zhuowen had his own sense of propriety when dealing with matters, and there was no need for her to worry. Instead, Yuan He's performance disappointed her slightly, but she did not point it out. All right. I'll go over right now. Out of Yuan He's expectations, Zhuowen agreed very readily, and then he brushed past Yuan He and walked over. Chapter 2446. Yun Maozhi was furious. Although the conversation between Zhuowen and Yuan He wasn't loud, it wasn't soft either. At least, all the disciples in the square heard it. Soon after, the disciples in the plaza roared with laughter as they looked mockingly at Zhuowen, who had finally taken a step forward. The rest of the palace masters also had strange looks on their faces as they looked at the indifferent palace master Jing Yun in confusion. They were also flabbergasted. Why would palace master Jing Yun give a precious spot to this foreign cultivator in front of them? They could naturally detect the aura on Zhuowen's body. He was at the peak of the void sky's 7th step. This kind of cultivation wasn't weak, and there was a gap between him and the great disciples of the 6 palaces. Of course, in their opinion, even if there was a gap, there was no need to be a coward. Therefore, they looked down on Zhuowen. Yuan He looked at Zhuowen's back and was stunned at first. Then, he sneered and followed. On the stairs above the 6 Desires Hell, the 10 disciples who had chosen their seats looked at Zhuowen with different expressions. Among the 10 people, except for Tan Kai, Qi Lan, Yao Xiangjuan, and Zhu Rui, who looked serious and strange, the others looked disdainful and contemptuous. Zhuowen's behavior just now had already made them think of him as a coward. The smile on Yun Maozhi's face grew wider and wider, and the disdain in his eyes grew stronger. Tan Kai, who was sitting one step behind Yun Maozhi, sneered in his heart and thought to himself, This Yun Maozhi really thinks that he's invincible among the younger generation. He's going to suffer soon. Not long ago, Tan Kai suffered a great loss at Zhuowen's hands. This made him realize how terrifying this white-clothed youth's strength was. Yun Maozhi was one of the 2 strongest disciples of the 6 Desires Palace. His cultivation was around the peak of the void sky 8th step, and he looked down on all the younger disciples of the 6 Desires Palace. Tan Kai knew that Yun Maozhi was very strong, but after being defeated by Zhuowen, he changed his mind. He had personally experienced the despair he felt when facing Zhuowen. It was much stronger than Yun Maojia's. The reason why he had such a feeling was because he knew that the white-clothed youth in front of him was much stronger than him. He had already surpassed Yun Maojia. Qi Lan and Yun Maojia had similar thoughts. After all, Zhuowen had casually defeated Tan Kai in her garden. He was even more clear than Tan Kai about how formidable and terrifying Zhuowen was. Zhuowen stopped more than 10 meters away from Yun Maojia and looked at him silently. "I've heard Palace Lord Jing Yun mention you before. You're called Longwen, right? I say, Longwen, look at your senior sister from the Desire Palace. She didn't even manage to grab a spot. You are also a member of the Desire Palace for the time being. Shouldn't you help your senior sister?" The mocking smile on Yun Maojia's lips deepened as he continued, "There's one more seat beside me. Even if it's empty, it's still empty. It's not impossible to give it up. If you kneel down and beg me, this seat will belong to your Desire Palace. You or your senior sister can sit here as you please." Zhuowen looked at Yun Maojia silently. He knew that the reason why the latter targeted him from the beginning was probably because of Yao Xiangjuan. Zhuowen felt a familiar gaze fall on him. He immediately raised his head and saw Yao Xiangjuan sitting on the third step looking at him apologetically. Zhuowen smiled slightly, indicating that the latter didn't need to care. This small detail between Zhuowen and Yao Xiangjuan was naturally caught by the sensitive Yun Maojia. Jealousy burned in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. "Longwen, what are you still standing there for? Why don't you do as senior brother Yun says? Do you want me to invite you?" Behind him, Yuan He's unfriendly voice sounded. His tone was full of urging and disdain. Zhuowen ignored Yuan He's urging behind him. Instead, he looked at Yun Maojia indifferently and said with a smile, "Senior brother Yun, there are 2 of us here. I'm afraid 1 seat isn't enough, right?" Yun Maojia was taken aback. Soon after, he sneered and said, "You still want 2 seats?" Yuan He came to Zhuowen's side first and said coldly, "Longwen, why would a coward like you need a seat? If you also want one, go to the 6th step. There's another seat there." "I prefer this first step, so I don't plan to go to the 6th step," Zhuowen said indifferently. Yun Maojia's face darkened. He sneered and said, "You mean you plan to snatch my seat?" "That's right. If senior brother Yun doesn't want to get hurt, you should give up this seat. Otherwise, you'll be embarrassed later," Zhuowen said as if nothing had happened. Yuan He was stunned on the spot. Zhuowen, who was only a coward in her eyes, actually said such gutsy words at this moment. She couldn't react for a moment. "Haha, what a joke!" Yun Maojia grinned. In his heart, he felt that Zhuowen was definitely courting death. Just as he was about to open his mouth to refute, a gust of wind suddenly swept over. The terrifying power caused Yun Maojia's pupils to shrink. Bang! Yun Maojia punched out without thinking. The terrifying fist wind spread out like a storm. Then, he groaned and retreated from the first step, landing below. The moment Yun Maojia landed, a figure brushed past him and stood where Yun Maojia was just now. "Senior brother Yun, you're too polite. Since you've given up this seat, I won't be polite." An indifferent voice slowly sounded, finally breaking the surrounding silence. Yun Maojia looked at his trembling right fist, then looked in shock at the white-clothed youth, who was already standing on the first step. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Just now, it was this white-clothed youth who attacked with a palm, and he casually punched out. The 2 of them exchanged a blow, and he was blasted out. Yun Maojia could still feel the intense pain coming from his right fist. At this moment, Yun Maojia was really shocked. How could a guy who he thought was just a coward have such powerful strength when he made a move? Although he didn't use his full strength just now to be able to injure him, this person was definitely not simple. Yuan He's beautiful eyes were stunned. She looked at Zhuowen, who was already standing on the first step, and then looked at Yun Maojia, who was blasted off the step by Zhuowen. For a moment, her mind couldn't wrap itself around the situation. The surrounding disciples were also stunned. Evidently, this sudden turn of events had caught them off guard. The 6 palace masters were more or less surprised. Among them, Palace Master Wujue looked at the calm and composed Palace Master Jingyun, and a thoughtful look appeared in her beautiful eyes. Bastard, I don't know what kind of despicable method he used. It seems that I have to get serious. Chapter 2447. Hellfire Zhuowen shook his head inwardly. This Yun Maozhi really cared about his face. He was clearly the one who was blasted down by Zhuowen, yet he said that Zhuowen had used despicable means. Senior Brother Long, be careful. This is Yun Maozhi's natal artifact, Cloud Vanishing. Its power is extraordinary. What's even more strange is that when he uses this artifact, Yun Maozhi's figure becomes erratic and is very difficult to deal with. The moment Yun Maozhi attacked, Qilin, who was on the second step, warned Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded, but did not care. Although Yun Maozhi's strength was not bad, the gap between them was not small, so he really did not put Yun Maozhi in his eyes. Whoosh! Yun Maozhi's speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he arrived in front of Zhuowen. Then, a cloud of smoke wrapped around Zhuowen, making it impossible for Zhuowen to see Yun Maozhi's figure clearly. Amidst the dense clouds, Yun Maozhi's figure drifted about like a ghost. Zhuowen stood in the cloud and looked at the surrounding cloud. His eyes revealed a trace of surprise. This cloud was quite powerful. Not only could it block his vision, it could even affect his divine sense. Unfortunately, Zhuowen was not an ordinary 7th-step void sky cultivator. His divine sense was even more terrifying than a 9th-step, half-step void sky cultivator. Although this cloud could restrain divine sense, it didn't have much of an effect on Zhuowen's divine sense. Zhuowen could even clearly see Yun Maozhi's exact location. Of course, if it was any other cultivator at the 8th step, their divine sense would be completely useless. They would be like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, passively waiting for Yun Maozhi to harvest them. However, Zhuowen was different. Yun Maozhi's whereabouts were now completely exposed to his divine sense. At this moment, Yun Maozhi was hiding in the clouds and was secretly delighted. He thought to himself, "This guy is probably out of his wits right now, isn't he? I'll let you stay in the clouds for a while longer and let you feel this feeling of confusion." Yun Maozhi couldn't help but laugh out loud. However, his expression soon changed. He saw that the cloud of smoke in front of him was suddenly blasted away by a large hand. Then, this large hand of energy unceremoniously grabbed at him. Bastard! How did this guy know my location? Yun Maozhi's expression changed greatly, but now was not the time for him to be shocked. That large energy hand had already completely covered him, and he could only passively reach it. Yun Maozhi's spear blasted out, instantly blasting out countless spear shadows in midair. He wanted to rely on these spear shadows to annihilate this energy hand. Unfortunately, this energy hand was too terrifying. The moment it touched the spear shadows were completely destroyed. Then, it ruthlessly smashed onto Yun Maozhi's body. Yun Maozhi was shocked and could only raise his long spear to block this terrifying big hand. Poochie! Yun Maozhi spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, he fell out of the clouds in an extremely sorry state and heavily smashed onto the ground. Outside, the onlooking disciples basically couldn't see the battle that happened in the clouds. However, the moment Yun Maozhi was blasted out of the clouds, he immediately attracted the attention of many people. When they discovered that this sorry figure was actually Yun Maozhi, they all fell silent. Yuan He took a few steps back and looked at this scene in disbelief. She was not a fool. Now, she finally knew that this Zhuowen was not a coward. Instead, he was an expert that even Yun Maozhi was not a match for. As for why this Zhuowen had not moved before, she had also guessed the reason. Most likely, in his eyes, they, the eldest disciples, were simply not enough, so he disdained to compete with them. The clouds dispersed, and a white figure stood motionless on the first step like a mountain. It seemed that he did not move at all. Obviously, in the battle just now, Yun Maozhe could not even make this person move a step. As long as one was not a fool, one would know how big the gap between Yun Maozhe and this person was. At this moment, the onlooking disciples did not dare to doubt the strength of this white-clothed youth. Even Yun Maozhe was easily defeated by him. Was there still a need to doubt this kind of strength? Yuan He's beautiful eyes flickered. She glanced at the white-clothed youth standing on the first step like a boulder, and her beautiful eyes were filled with a complicated and guilty expression. It was laughable that she had previously mocked this person as a coward. Now, she was ruthlessly slapped in the face by this battle. She glanced at the position beside Zhuowen and hesitated for a moment. In the end, she still opened her mouth and said, "Senior Brother Long, the position beside you." Zhuowen smiled slightly and said, "Senior Sister Yuan He, you and I are both representatives of the Desire Palace. This position is for you." When Yuan He saw the smile on Zhuowen's face, the guilt on her face became even more intense. She even stuttered when she spoke. She walked to the position beside Zhuowen and lowered her head. She did not dare to look at Zhuowen as she softly said, "Thank you, Senior Brother Long." Zhuowen only smiled. Previously, Yuan He's performance had indeed made him loathe the latter. However, this position was given to him by Palace Master Jing Yun. Now that he had already snatched 2 positions, he naturally had to give them to Yuan He. Otherwise, Palace Master Jing Yun would lose face. After a long while, Yun Maozhe finally stood up. His face was pale, but the resentment in his eyes was even more intense. He glanced at Zhuowen, and without saying a word, he chose the last remaining position on the 6th step. Palace Master Wu Ju did not show any favoritism. After the 12 people had chosen their positions, she once again gave Desireless an order. Soon after, Desireless finally released the might of the 6 desires hell. Bang! In an instant, the hellfire at the bottom of the steps was like the mouth of a ferocious beast. It fiercely rushed up and enveloped all 12 people on the step. If one were to observe carefully, the 6th step was the closest to the bottom. Therefore, it was the place that came into contact with the hellfire the most. It was also the place that was the most torturous. Yun Maozhe once again spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face became even paler. He had already suffered serious injuries. Now that he was hit by the hellfire, his injuries were naturally worsened. Zhuowen frowned slightly. When the hellfire arrived, he didn't feel the scorching heat that flames should have. Instead, he felt an extreme chill. The instant this chill invaded his body, he clearly felt his 5 senses being gradually stripped away. The pain of having his 5 senses stripped away caused even Zhuowen to break out in cold sweat. This pain was much more intense than being skinned alive. Zhuowen thought that this was merely the first step. If it was the 6th step, the pain would be several times more intense. Just as Zhuowen was thinking about this, his divine sense sensed that Yun Maozhe and another disciple on the 6th step had already let out miserable cries. Those cries would cause one's hair to stand on end. The disciple standing beside Yun Maozhe only lasted for 10 breaths of time before fainting. His entire body twitched, and white foam came out of his mouth. Fortunately, the instant that disciple fainted, Palace Master Wu Ju used her divine power to pull him out. On the other hand, although Yun Maozhe's cries were very miserable, he was still barely able to endure. Time slowly passed. Of the 12 people on the 6 desires hell, only 6 remained. They were Zhuowen, Yuan He, Qilan, Tan Kai, Yao Xiangjuan, and Yun Maozhe. At this moment, only half of the time had passed. Chapter 2448. Pass the test *plop. Yuan He, who was sitting cross-legged beside Zhuowen, suddenly fell to the ground and fainted. Zhuowen didn't have the time to pay attention to Yuan He. Instead, he silently endured the pain of his 5 senses being stripped away. This kind of pain wasn't instantaneous. Instead, it gradually deepened. It was like a skinner. He didn't peel off your skin all at once. Instead, He slowly separated your skin from your flesh bit by bit. This kind of pain was continuous. Moreover, it became more and more painful. Yuan He was pulled out by Wu Jue. At this moment there were only 5 people left on the platform. After an hour had passed, the remaining 5 people had all persevered. After Palace Master Wu Jue withdrew the Hell of 6 Desires, Yun Maozhe, who was sitting on the 6th platform, immediately fell to the ground and actually fainted. As for Qi Lan and Tan Kai, although they didn't faint, they fell into a state of unconsciousness. In fact, they weren't far from fainting. Yao Xiangjuan's performance was extremely good. Although her face was pale, her consciousness was extremely clear. She opened her eyes and looked around in confusion. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. His condition was the best. His vitality was much better than Yao Xiangjuan's. It was as if he wasn't affected by the Hell of 6 Desires at all. The 6 palace masters glanced at Zhuowen at the same time. Obviously, Zhuowen's performance was beyond their expectations. Congratulations to the 5 of you for obtaining the qualifications to enter the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. In 3 days, I will open the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. I hope that you won't be late. After Palace Master Wu Jue finished speaking, she grabbed Yun Maozhe and slowly entered the Palace of Desire. As for Desireless, he was like a walking corpse as he followed behind Palace Master Wu Jue. Yao Xiangjuan stood up and smiled at Zhuowen. Senior Brother Long, congratulations. Zhuowen cupped his hands and returned the greeting. The main reason I have this opportunity is because of Miss Yao and Palace Master Jing Yun. I still have to thank you. Speaking up to here, Zhuowen looked at Yao Xiangjuan in astonishment and said, Miss Yao, it seems that your willpower is really strong. It seems that you haven't been affected too much. At this point, Zhuowen couldn't help but glance at Qi Lan and Tan Kai, who were in an unconscious state. These 2 fellows were sitting on the 2nd step, while Yao Xiangjuan was sitting on the 3rd step. In terms of geographical position, Yao Xiangjuan was slightly inferior to these 2, but the impact on Yao Xiangjuan was actually smaller. As for Qi Lan and Tan Kai, they almost fainted. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes revealed a touch of imperceptible sadness as she whispered, Maybe I'm used to it? Are you used to it? Zhuowen asked with a frown. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were a little panicked, as if she had said something wrong. She hesitated, but did not continue to speak. Zhuowen was puzzled, but he smiled and said, I was a little impulsive on this matter. I shouldn't have casually asked. Zhuowen knew that Yao Xiangjuan must have her own secret to be able to pass through the 6 Desires Hell so easily. Wasn't he, Zhuowen, the same? If it wasn't for his divine sense being abnormally strong, he wouldn't have been able to pass through the 6 Desires Hell so easily. Yao Xiangjuan looked at Zhuowen with a trace of gratitude in her eyes. Senior Brother Long, I'll go back first. We'll meet again in 3 days. Yao Xiangjuan finished speaking and entered the Palace of Desire. At this moment, the other palace masters also left with their respective disciples. Senior Brother Long, I had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai before. Please forgive me. After sending Yao Xiangjuan off, Yuan He came in front of Zhuowen and lowered her head to Zhuowen with a guilty look. Zhuowen looked at Palace Master Jing Yun behind Yuan He. He knew that Yuan He came to apologize under the instructions of Palace Master Jing Yun. Moreover, Yuan He was unconscious before, but now he was awake. It should be Palace Master Jing Yun who came. Senior Sister Yuan He is too polite. It's just a small matter, what's there to mention? Zhuowen said with a smile. Yuan He let out a light breath and immediately said, Senior Brother Long, your cultivation is high. It's not appropriate to call me Senior Sister. Just call me Junior Sister Yuan He. Okay. Zhuowen nodded. Long Wen Yuan He, let's go. The 6 Desires Heavenly Lake will open in 3 days. It's useless to stay here now. Palace Master Jing Yun's voice sounded. 3 days later, Palace Master Jing Yun once again brought Zhuowen to the square outside the Palace of Desire. At this moment, Palace Master Xiang Lan and Palace Master Hua Ting had already arrived in the square. They brought Tan Kai and Qi Lan respectively. Tan Kai glanced at Zhuowen, his eyes full of fear, but he didn't say a word. On the other hand, Qi Lan gave Zhuowen a friendly smile, and Zhuowen also returned a smile. Palace Master Hua Ting saw Qi Lan's small action and couldn't help but ask softly, "Qi Lan, you know this long one?" Qi Lan respectfully said, "Palace Master, I only met Senior Brother Long a few times. I also met him in the garden. After chatting, I found that Senior Brother Long is a good person." Hua Ting nodded, as if she was muttering to herself. "I heard from Jingyun that this Long one seems to be a rogue cultivator. Moreover, he's not that old. It's really commendable for him to have such strength." Qi Lan's beautiful eyes revealed a strange color. Although she knew that Zhuowen was very strong, she really didn't know that Zhuowen was actually a rogue cultivator. She always thought that Zhuowen must have a very strong force behind him. That's why Zhuowen could have such powerful strength. She didn't expect that he was just a rogue cultivator. Qi Lan looked at Zhuowen with even more reverence. For a rogue cultivator to be able to cultivate to such a level, what kind of perseverance and opportunity did it require? At least, Qi Lan knew that she definitely couldn't do it. Zhuowen naturally didn't know about the conversation between Qi Lan and Hua Ting. He also didn't know that Qi Lan inexplicably gave him a good person card. Now, he was looking forward to the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Zhuowen was very clear that as long as his original body's cultivation could use the Six Desires Heavenly Lake to enter the 8 steps Void Sky, then his original body's strength alone would have a qualitative change. At that time, his divine ability, Waning Sun in the Sea, would have no restrictions. At that time, his strength would be comparable to the life-enlightening realm. It could be said that the Six Desires Heavenly Lake this time had a crucial effect on his advancement. Therefore, he couldn't help but be excited. Just as Zhuowen was deep in thought, the door of Desire Palace opened. Palace Master Wu Ju brought Yao Xiangjuan and Yun Maozha out. 3 Palace Masters, you also know the location of the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Now follow me. The moment Palace Master Wu Ju came out, he took out a sparkling and translucent flying divine tool and brought Yao Xiangjuan and Yun Maozha up. Zhuowen also noticed that Desireless was already on the flying divine tool. He thought in his heart, could it be that Desireless is also going to follow me? Palace Master Jingyun brought Zhuowen and followed the other 2 Palace Masters into the flying divine tool. Chapter 2449. Six Desires Poison. Yun Maozha's gaze was ignored by Zhuowen. Right now, he was looking forward to entering the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Palace Master Wujue's flying divine tool was extremely fast. After a short while, it stopped at a barren land in the northern part of the Six Desires star field. "It's here. Let's all go down." As soon as Palace Master Wujue finished speaking, she waved her sleeve, and everyone on the flying divine tool involuntarily left. Then, Palace Master Wujue naturally put away the flying divine tool. Zhuowen looked at Palace Master Wujue in shock. Just now, when Palace Master Wujue pushed them out of the flying divine tool, Zhuowen didn't even feel it. Clearly, Palace Master Wujue's strength was much stronger than his. Palace Master Jingyun was already strong enough, but she was still casually pushed out by Palace Master Wujue. One could see how terrifying Palace Master Wujue was. Zhuowen couldn't help but think of the terrifying protection Yao Xiangjuan had triggered in the Divine Pill Secret Realm by Luosha King. That protection was set up on Yao Xiangjuan's body by the dual extremities of life and death. Zhuowen knew that the protection should have been set up by Palace Master Wujue. Clearly, Palace Master Wujue was a genuine dual extremities of life and death expert. Palace Master Wujue's personality was clearly cold. He treated everyone and everything with an ice-cold appearance. Moreover, he was extremely domineering. Zhuowen wasn't used to Palace Master Wu Jue's domineering attitude. However, Palace Master Jing Yun and the others looked calm. Clearly, they were used to Palace Master Wu Jue's style. Palace Master Wu Jue landed on the barren land in front of him. This barren land was formed by countless dim stars. Zhuowen looked at these stars and knew that they were on the verge of collapse. Palace Master Wu Jue formed a seal with both hands. Then, the countless stars in this barren land began to move. Zhuowen looked at 1,000 miles in front of Palace Master Wu Jue. He saw a black whirlpool there. Those stars were constantly moving because of the whirlpool's power. The surrounding stars were all sucked into the black vortex. Then, the vortex suddenly exploded, and a dazzling light flashed. Zhuowen could not help but close his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, he found that the wilderness in front of him had turned into a huge pool. The water in the pool was not clear and transparent. Instead, it was colorful, as if it was made up of all kinds of pigment. "This is the Six Desires Heavenly Lake?" Zhuowen could not help but ask in a low voice. Palace Master Jing Yun nodded and said, "This is the Six Desires Heavenly Lake." Right now, Palace Master Wu Ju has already opened the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Later on, listen to Palace Master Wu Ju's instructions. Do not go in without permission. "Can't I go in by myself now?" Zhuowen asked doubtfully. "Yes, the Six Desires Heavenly Lake is extremely safe. However, do you see the black substance around the Six Desires Heavenly Lake? That black substance is extremely poisonous. Moreover, it is a poison that targets the depths of the soul. If you are contaminated by this black substance, it will be very troublesome." Palace Master Jing Yun patiently explained. After Palace Master Jing Yun's reminder, Zhuowen finally noticed that the Six Desires Heavenly Lake was indeed surrounded by a black substance. Because this black substance was too close to the darkness of the starry sky, he did not notice it for a while. The Six Desires Heavenly Lake is surrounded by the Six Desires poison. It is a terrifying poison that targets the soul. If desireless does not bring you in, you will not be able to enter. Also, this Six Desires Heavenly Lake exists in another space. Right now, this is only a projection. However, this projection has a teleportation function. Only by entering this projection can you be teleported into the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Palace Master Wu Ju looked around and introduced indifferently. Finally, her gaze fell on Zhuowen. Zhuowen's heart tightened. This Palace Master Wu Ju was an expert at the two extremities of life and death. She was many times stronger than him. Being stared at by her, Zhuowen felt as if his entire body was being seen through. Fortunately, Palace Master Wu Ju's gaze did not linger on Zhuowen for too long. Instead, she naturally shifted her gaze away. Zhuowen also knew that Palace Master Wu Ju's words were meant for him. Yao Xiangjuan and the others were disciples of the Six Desires Palace. They definitely knew the things to pay attention to when entering the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Only Zhuowen was completely unaware. "You can enter. Just follow behind Desireless. Also, I must remind you that you only have a month's time in the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. After a month, you will be automatically teleported out." After Palace Master Wu Ju finished speaking, she clasped her hands behind her back and no longer spoke. As for Desireless, he stepped out from behind Palace Master Wu Ju and slowly walked towards the Six Desires Heavenly Lake's projection. Yun Maozhe, Tan Kai, and Qi Lan hurriedly followed behind him. As for Yao Xiangjuan, she came to Zhuowen's side and said, "Big Brother Long, let's follow him." Zhuowen knew that Yao Xiangjuan wanted to take care of him. After all, he knew nothing about the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Zhuowen did not refuse. He nodded his head and walked alongside Yao Xiangjuan. When Yun Maozhe saw this scene, the resentment in his eyes became even more intense. However, he was powerless in his heart. This Zhuowen was too strong. He was simply not a match for him. Moreover, Palace Master Wu Ju would definitely not agree to his request and attack a junior. The instant Desireless walked to the edge of the Six Desires Heavenly Lake's projection, the black substance at the edge seemed to have encountered the heavens and earth. Zhuowen looked at this scene strangely. He could not help but ask, "Junior Sister Yao, is the Six Desires poison afraid of Desireless?" Yao Xiangjuan smiled and said, "Senior Brother Long, you probably don't know the characteristics of the Six Desires poison. Since it's called the Six Desires poison, it's naturally related to the 7 emotions and 6 desires. As long as one is a human, they will have the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Even a cultivator with a high cultivation cannot achieve the state of having no desires. The 6 desires poison will follow the aura of the 7 emotions and 6 desires in a human's body and enter the depths of one's soul. As long as one still has the 7 emotions and 6 desires, the 6 desires poison will be able to enter one's soul without anyone noticing." When he heard this, Zhuowen also understood why the 6 desires poison would avoid Desireless. The 6 desires poison needed the 7 emotions and 6 desires as a medium to enter a human's soul. However, Desireless did not have the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Therefore, the 6 desires poison had no way of entering one's soul. In fact, it was very afraid of Desireless. Following behind Desireless, Zhuowen's group was extremely relaxed. They did not let the 6 desires poison approach them. When they reached the center of the 6 desires Heavenly Lake's projection, Desireless stopped. The others also stopped. Zhuowen was inside the 6 desires Heavenly Lake. When he discovered that there was no water flow, he knew that Palace Master Wu Ju had not lied to him. This was indeed just a projection. Suddenly, Zhuowen felt the world spinning. He was not unfamiliar with this feeling. It was the feeling of being teleported. Clearly, he was in this projection and would soon be teleported to the real 6 desires Heavenly Lake. Chapter 2450. Yun Maozhe, unwilling to give up when Zhuowen opened his eyes, he realized that his entire body was soaked in water. He lowered his head and realized that he was in a colorful pond. "I've already entered the 6 desires Heavenly Lake?" Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He immediately leaped out of the water and hovered above it. Zhuowen was surprised to find that his body was not wet at all after he leaped out of the water. It was as if he had not been soaked in the water at all. His body was not even dyed by the colorful pond water. "What a strange pond water," Zhuowen muttered to himself. Only then did he start to observe his surroundings. He realized that his surroundings were gray and the visibility was very low. He could only see about 1,000 meters away. As far as his eyes could see, he realized that the surrounding soil was similar to a high slope. The surface area of this slope was not small. However, the other areas were all gray and could not be seen clearly. Therefore, Zhuowen could not estimate the surface area of this high slope. However, in Zhuowen's vision, he saw the other 4 6 desires Heavenly Lake. There were also 4 figures soaking in each of the 4 6 desires Heavenly Lake. Needless to say, these 4 figures were definitely the other 4 people who had entered the 6 desires Heavenly Lake. "Brother Long, the 6 desires Heavenly Lake will automatically distribute a corresponding number of 6 desires Heavenly Lakes according to the number of people who enter. The 6 desires Heavenly Lake contains energy that is extremely easy to absorb. Most importantly, the 6 desires Heavenly Lake can allow your comprehension to increase rapidly and help you break through your bottleneck." Yao Xiangjuan's voice rang out in Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen nodded towards the pond that Yao Xiangjuan was in. Soon after, he returned to his own pond and began to absorb the energy in the 6 desires Heavenly Lake without any distractions. The moment Zhuowen absorbed the energy in the 6 desires Heavenly Lake, his eyes lit up with excitement. This was because he realized that as he continued to absorb the energy in the 6 desires Heavenly Lake, his comprehension of the 8 steps of the void sky became more and more complete. Back when he broke through the 8 steps of the void sky, his comprehension was still lacking. However, now that he relied on the 6 desires heavenly lake, he realized that he understood a lot of the things that he was still confused about back then. Zhuowen's mood was lifted. He knew that according to this trend, he had the confidence to break through within a month. While the 5 of them were comprehending and breaking through in their respective 6 desires heavenly lakes, Desireless was floating in midair. It was as if he was unconsciously floating in midair. Whether it was intentional or not, Desireless landed on the edge of the 6 desires heavenly lake where Zhuowen was. He tilted his head and sized up Zhuowen. If Zhuowen opened his eyes now, he would definitely be shocked. One must know that Desireless did not have any facial features. Being sized up by such a faceless person was definitely a terrifying thing. Appearing as if he didn't discover anything, Desireless lost interest. He casually found an empty space and sat down on the ground. Time passed minute by minute. On the 20th day, Tan, who was in the leftmost pool among the 5 pools, suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with joy. "I broke through," Tan Kai muttered with a smile on his face. His cultivation was originally at the intermediate stage of the 8 steps of the void sky realm. This time, relying on the 6 desires heavenly lake, he directly broke through to the late stage of the 8 steps of the void sky realm. Although there were still 10 days until they left the 6 desires heavenly lake, Tan Kai knew that these 10 days were not enough for him to break through again. Therefore, he stopped cultivating and began to consolidate his cultivation. At the same time, he also paid attention to the people in the other pools. One day after Tan Kai broke through, Qilon also smoothly broke through. Similar to Tan Kai, her cultivation also broke through to the late stage of the 8 steps of the void sky realm. However, she didn't stop cultivating. Instead, she continued to absorb the 6 desires heavenly lake and cultivate. Clearly, she didn't want to let go of the remaining time. On the 25th day, the pool where Yun Maozhe was in suddenly soared into the sky. Soon after, a terrifying aura spread out along with the soaring water pillar. Immediately after, Yun Maozhe's wild laughter rang out. Qilon and Tan Kai, who had already made a breakthrough, were naturally attracted by the activity at Yun Maozhe's side. Especially when they felt the aura that was being emitted from the pool where Yun Maozhe was located, the 2 of them revealed a trace of surprise. "Looks like Yun Maozhe broke through to the half-step void sky realm 9th step. Although I'm a little unconvinced, this guy's talent is indeed stronger than mine." Tan Kai's eyes flickered as he muttered to himself helplessly. Qilan's eyes flickered, but she didn't reveal the slightest bit of surprise. Yun Maozhe's talent was originally recognized by the 6 Desires Palace. However, Qilon was more concerned about Yao Xiangjuan, who was still absorbing the energy not far away. Yao Xiangjuan's talent was actually above Yun Maozhe's. After all, Yao Xiangjuan's cultivation was the same as Yun Maozhe's, but the time she spent cultivating was much shorter than Yun Maozhe's. Since Yun Maozhe had already broken through, Yao Xiangjuan shouldn't be far away from breaking through as well. At this moment, Yun Maozhe was floating in the air. In the void behind him, a huge void sky bridge appeared. He landed on the 8th step, then his right foot suddenly stomped on the 9th step. Suddenly, half of the 9th step lit up. Yun Maozhe's eyes flickered. He really wanted to put his left foot on the 9th step, but he knew it was basically impossible. After all, there was still a big gap between him and the real void sky 9th steps. This time, he had only broken through to the half-step void sky 9th step. After a stalemate of about 10 breaths, Yun Maozhe finally didn't dare to put his left foot on the 9th step. He was very clear that if he forcibly put his left foot on the 9th step, he would definitely be counterattacked by the powerful energy of the void sky bridge. At that time, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Thinking of this, Yun Maozhe withdrew his left foot and put away the void sky bridge. "Senior brother Yun, congratulations on breaking through to the half-step void sky 9th steps. As soon as Yun Maozhe landed, Tan Kai cupped his hands and congratulated Yun Maozhe. Yun Maozhe put his hands behind his back, raised his chin, and revealed a proud expression. He only nodded calmly in response to Tan Kai's congratulations. Tan Kai's face stiffened, but he didn't approach Yun Maozhe. He knew that the latter liked to show off. The closer he got, the more pretentious this guy would be. Therefore, he didn't intend to embarrass himself. Seeing that Tan Kai didn't continue to approach, Yun Maozhe was a little displeased. However, he didn't intend to pursue the matter. Instead, he looked coldly at the rightmost pool. There was a white-robed youth sitting cross-legged in the pool, silently cultivating and absorbing the energy inside. "Long One, you bastard! You bullied and humiliated me before. Now that I've broken through, I'll return everything you did to me in full detail." Yun Maozhe grinned, then took a step towards Zhuo Wen's pond. After breaking through, Yun Maozhe was filled with confidence. He could feel that his strength had increased by a lot compared to before. He could vaguely feel a trace of the strength of a genius. Chapter 24:51. 8 Steps of the Illusionary Sky. This guy really wants to take revenge. Tan Kai looked at Yun Maozhe, who was rushing towards Zhuowen, and felt a little helpless. Although Yun Maozhe's talent was indeed very high, Tan Kai didn't have any admiration for him. It was mainly because Yun Maozhe's character wasn't very good. Qi Lan's beautiful eyes flickered. Although she wanted to stop him, she knew that she wasn't Yun Maozhe's opponent even though she had made a breakthrough. Long One, die. Before Yun Maozhe reached the pool where Zhuowen was, his right hand had already formed a palm attack and fiercely attacked the figure in the pool. Bang! 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 The terrifying energy palm smashed into the pool like a mountain. Soon after, pillars of water soared into the sky and roared in all directions. Yun Maozhe stood in the middle of the countless pillars of water. The corner of his mouth revealed a sinister smile as he looked down at the pool below. He didn't hold back at all in this palm attack. He knew that with his half-step illusionary sky 9 steps, even if he didn't kill Long One, he could still severely injure him. After Long One came out, he would teach him a lesson and let him know the consequences of offending him. Of course, since Long One was a guest invited by Palace Master Jingyun, Yun Maozhe didn't plan to kill him. He just wanted to teach him a lesson. Scram! A cold voice suddenly sounded. Soon after, an inconspicuous imperial jade seal suddenly flew out from the raging pillars of water below. As the imperial jade seal flew out, it constantly grew in size. In the end, it became 100 zhang tall and fiercely smashed towards Yun Maozhe. Yun Maozhe's pupils shrank. The moment the imperial jade seal smashed towards him, he felt the threat of death. He was completely flustered. Yun Maozhe roared and immediately took out his natal divine artifact, Cloud Vanishing Cloud. He used all his strength and heavily hacked at the imperial jade seal. Ding! A crisp sound accompanied by countless sparks rang out. Soon after, Yun Maozhe's pupils shrank as he discovered that his Cloud Vanishing Cloud was actually broken. His right hand that was holding the spear was twisted due to the huge force. Poochie! Yun Maozhe suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and then flew out, smashing into the soil not far away in an extremely sorry state, creating a huge pit. Qi Lan and Tan Kai stared blankly at this scene, their eyes filled with horror. They saw with their own eyes that Yun Maozhe's natal divine artifact, Cloud Vanishing, had been broken under the attack of the imperial jade seal. Yun Maozhe himself was lying in the huge pit, on the verge of death, as though he would die at any moment. The pillar of water gradually receded, and then Zhuowen, dressed in white, slowly stepped out of the void. He withdrew his right hand, and the phagocytosis shrunk to the size of a palm and landed in his palm. At this moment, Zhuowen's gaze was extremely unfriendly as he stared coldly at the half-dead Yun Maozhe lying in the huge pit not far away. Just now, Zhuowen had already reached the most critical moment. Just when he was about to break through, Yuan Mao's attack had directly interrupted him from his cultivation state, causing the aura he had worked so hard to break through to the next level to directly collapse and disappear without a trace. Zhuowen was very clear that if he wanted to gather the aura to break through again, he would have to spend a lot of time. There were only 5 days left in the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. The time was really too short. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's killing intent towards Yuan Mao became even more intense. If it weren't for this guy, his breakthrough wouldn't have been in vain. This long one is really abnormal. He actually beat Yuan Mao, who had broken through to the 9th step of the half-step virtual sky realm, into a half-dead state with just one move? Tan Kai swallowed his saliva and spat out these words while trembling with fear. Now Tan Kai was truly terrified. He realized that the white-clothed youth before him was truly unfathomable. To be able to defeat Yuan Mao in one move, just how powerful did this guy have to be? Qi Lan was also shocked. Although she knew that Zhuowen was very strong, she didn't expect him to be so ridiculously strong. To be able to defeat a half-step virtual sky realm expert in one move, perhaps only a life-comprehending realm expert could do that. Could it be that this Zhuowen was actually a life-comprehending realm expert? You've ruined the timing of my advancement. You've done well. I didn't want to kill you, but unfortunately, you're the one who provoked me. You can go in peace. Zhuowen's eyes surged with killing intent. With a wave of his sleeve, he planned to use the phagocytosis to thoroughly kill Yuan Mao. Senior Brother Long, you mustn't. Qi Lan hurriedly said, if you kill Yuan Mao, you will be wanted by the Six Desires Palace. At that time, you won't be able to walk out of the Six Desires Palace. After Qi Lan's reminder, Zhuowen calmed down. After all, Yuan Mao was the eldest disciple of the Desire Palace. If he was killed like this, Palace Master Wu Ju would definitely not let him off. Yuan Mao, I'm warning you. If you dare to disturb me again, even if I have to risk offending the Six Desires Palace, I will kill you. After regaining his calm, Zhuowen threatened the half-dead Yuan Mao and returned to the Six Desires Heavenly Lake. Now that there wasn't much time left, he had to make every second count to regain the momentum he had gained from advancing. Otherwise, after leaving the Six Desires Heavenly Lake, his advancement to the illusionary sky 8 steps would be far away. Yuan Mao struggled to crawl out of the hole and spat out another mouthful of blood. His face was pale as he looked at the pool where Zhuowen was. His eyes were filled with fear. If he knew that Zhuowen's strength was so terrifying, he wouldn't have dared to provoke him even if he had 10 times the courage. After swallowing a healing pill, Yuan Mao fell into his own pool. He swore in his heart that he would never provoke Zhuowen again. Qi Lan and Tan Kai were also frightened. The two of them didn't even dare to look at Zhuowen. They knew that it would be too easy for Zhuowen to kill the 4 of them. Another 3 days passed. There were still 2 days before the Six Desires Heavenly Lake closed. Yao Xiangjuan finally broke through to the half-step virtual sky realm 9 step. After successfully breaking through, Yao Xiangjuan glanced at the pool where Zhuowen was. When she saw that Zhuowen still hadn't broken through, her eyebrows immediately furrowed. According to her calculations, Zhuowen would definitely break through to the virtual sky realm 8 steps faster than her. Now that she had broken through, Zhuowen still hadn't broken through. It was really strange. Because Yao Xiangjuan was too focused on cultivation, the conflict between Zhuowen and Yuan Mao didn't wake her up. Therefore, she didn't know that there was a fierce conflict between Zhuowen and Yuan Mao. Another 2 days passed. Today was the last day. Yao Xiangjuan was also a little anxious. She was very clear that if Zhuowen still hadn't broken through, then it wouldn't be so easy for him to break through when he went out. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the originally quiet pool of Zhuowen was filled with countless splashes of water. Waves of water splashed everywhere as if there were a group of demons dancing wildly. Above the countless splashes of water, an incomparably huge purple virtual sky bridge floated in the air. This guy's virtual sky bridge is so huge? Yun Maozhe immediately noticed Zhuowen's virtual sky bridge, and couldn't help but exclaim. Chapter 24:52. Tearing force amidst the countless splashes, a white figure suddenly leaped up and landed on the 7th step of the enormous illusory heavenly bridge. Zhuowen looked at the last 2 steps that were still dim, but his eyes were filled with confidence. Now that he was about to step onto the 8th step, the 9th step was 1 step closer to him. Zhuowen was very clear that as long as his cultivation base could smoothly advance to the life-comprehending realm, then he would completely possess the qualifications to be on equal footing with the other lords of the heaven domains. He would also have a lot of authority to speak. One had to know that he planned to advance to the life-comprehending realm after comprehending the space-time law to perfection. Therefore, if he successfully advanced to the life-comprehending realm, his strength would not be comparable to ordinary life-comprehending realm cultivators. However, Zhuowen also knew that his path of advancement was destined to be much more difficult than ordinary cultivators. Zhuowen suddenly stepped onto the 8th step without any obstruction, and the enormous 8th step of the illusory heavenly bridge was completely lit up by Zhuowen. The moment Zhuowen stepped onto the 8th step, his entire body felt incomparably comfortable, as if his entire body had been reborn. He could also clearly feel that his strength had undergone a qualitative change after advancing to the 8th step of the illusory heavenly bridge. If he did not rely on the everlasting ice lotus, Zhuowen might not be as good as a life-comprehending realm expert, but at least he would not be in such a sorry state when facing a life-comprehending realm expert like before. Of course, if he added the everlasting ice lotus and the mysterious death energy on his body, he would have the strength to fight a life-comprehending realm expert. Even if he encountered a weaker life-comprehending realm cultivator, Zhuowen would be completely defeated. After advancing to the 8th step of the illusory heavenly bridge, Zhuowen did not continue. Instead, he landed on the illusory heavenly bridge and put it away. Senior Brother Long, congratulations on advancing to the 8th step of the illusory heavenly bridge. Yao Xiangjuan sincerely cupped her fists at Zhuowen. Zhuowen smiled slightly and sighed in his heart. He had finally advanced to the 8th step of the illusory heavenly bridge. It could be said that advancing to the void sky 8 steps was a qualitative change for him. Of course, if he could reach the 9 steps void sky, then he would be reborn. However, this was only Zhuowen's fantasy. Qilin and Tan Kai also hurried forward to congratulate Zhuowen. After knowing Zhuowen's strength, the 2 of them had the intention to befriend him. After all, Zhuowen's strength was truly rare. They could foresee that Zhuowen's future potential would be limitless. On the other hand, Yun Maozhe stood in a corner and looked at Zhuowen with fear in his eyes. He didn't dare to approach Zhuowen. Zhuowen merely glanced at Yun Maozhe and did not pay much attention to him. From the very beginning, he had not paid much attention to Yun Maozhe. After all, the gap between the 2 of them was too great. At this moment, Desireless, who was seated cross-legged not far away, slowly stood up. Without saying a word, she brushed past the 5 of them. Then, she slowly walked forward. "What's she doing?" Zhuowen asked in astonishment. "It's almost time for the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. Desireless is planning to bring us out of here. We just need to follow behind her," Yao Xiangjuan explained with a smile. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. Soon after, the 5 of them tacitly followed behind Desireless. Desireless arrived at a white circle of light that was several meters wide. With a single glance, Zhuowen could tell that this circle of light was a teleportation array. After the 5 of them stood still, Desireless formed a seal with her hands. Soon after, everyone was enveloped in white light and a teleportation power spread out around them. After roughly 20 breaths of time, Zhuowen discovered that he was still inside the circle of light. At the same time, a terrifying tearing force enveloped his body. It seemed as though it wanted to ruthlessly tear him to pieces. Zhuowen discovered that something was wrong. he discovered that the tearing force in the surrounding white light was becoming more and more terrifying. Ah! No! A miserable shriek came from beside Zhuowen. Zhuowen was resisting the tearing force with great difficulty. With great difficulty, he managed to form his divine sense. Then, he discovered that Tan Kai, who was beside him, had actually been torn to pieces by the tearing force. Blood splattered all over the place. The instant Tan Kai was torn apart, Qi-Lan also spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face turned pale and her body started to distort. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. With a cold snort, he immediately took out the phagocytosis. It turned into a mountain-like giant and blocked Qi-Lan's surroundings. With the protection of the phagocytosis, Qi-Lan, who was originally on the verge of dying, was barely able to keep her life. With great difficulty, Qi-Lan turned her head around and nodded gratefully at Zhuowen. Her eyes were filled with gratitude. Pucci! At that moment, a bloody hole immediately appeared on Zhuowen's right shoulder. That was because he was unable to endure the terrifying tearing power. That was why the powerful tearing wound appeared. Zhuowen hurriedly operated his divine power. Only then was he able to resist the tearing force. However, he knew that he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. The tearing force was too terrifying. Yao Xiangjuan and Yun Maozhou were relatively stronger. As such, they were barely able to hold on. At this moment, Desireless didn't say a single word. He stood at the front and extended his slender jade-like hand. Suddenly, the terrifying tearing force weakened a lot. Yao Xiangjuan and Yun Maozhou, who were bitterly holding on, finally relaxed a lot. As for Zhuowen, he withdrew the phagocytosis from his palm and looked ahead with a grave expression. Yao Xiangjuan and Qi-Lan arrived beside Zhuowen. As for Yun Maozhou, he also approached them. However, he didn't dare to get too close to Zhuowen. Exactly what's going on? What a terrifying tearing force! Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes revealed a terrified expression as she spoke. Zhuowen shook his head. Even he didn't know exactly what was going on. This strange tearing force had suddenly appeared in the teleportation array. It was as though some terrifying force had bombarded the teleportation array during the teleportation. Boom, boom, boom. The terrifying sound waves became even denser. The source of the sound waves was on the other side of the teleportation array. At this moment, Desireless' slender jade-like hand seals were constantly forming hand seals. Surging energy surged out and blocked the terrifying tearing force coming from the other side of the teleportation array. At the same time, Desireless dutifully led the group of four forward. As they got closer to the source of the teleportation array, Zhuowen discovered that the rumbling sounds in his ears had become even denser. It was as though experts were fighting intensely. Zhuowen wasn't unfamiliar with this sound. Yao Xiangjuan and the others also revealed shocked expressions. Clearly, they had also heard the sounds of fighting. Someone actually dared to invade the Six Desires Palace. How audacious! Yun Maozhou said in a low voice with a gloomy expression. Exactly what's going on? We'll know once we get out. Yao Xiangjuan said indifferently. Rip. Desireless' jade-like hand suddenly made a grabbing motion in front of her, forcibly tearing the obstruction of the teleportation array into pieces. Soon after, she led the group out of the teleportation array. Zhuowen surveyed his surroundings and discovered that they were still in a desolate region. Clearly, they had really come out of the teleportation array. However, at this moment, the desolate region was even more desolate and dilapidated than before. Many dim stars had been destroyed beyond recognition and had turned into ruins. Chapter 24:53. Old Lord Tushita. Boom, boom, boom. Another ear-piercing boom resounded. Not far away from the desolate region, two figures were constantly exchanging blows. One of the women wore a white robe and held a horsetail whisk. Zhuowen was familiar with her. She was Wu Ju, the Palace Master of Desire Palace. As for the figure that was fighting with Palace Master Wujue, It was a strong man who wore beast skin and his arms were exposed. He was as strong as a ferocious tiger. Even Zhuo Wen felt his heart skip a beat when he sensed the aura emitted by this muscular man. Furthermore, to be able to fight Palace Master Wu Ju to such an extent, Zhuo Wen knew that this man was definitely an expert of the extreme realm of life and death. However, Zhuo Wen found it strange that although the Six Desires heavenly domain was one of the top 3 heavenly domains, there shouldn't be 2 experts in the extreme realm of life and death. Moreover, looking at the battle between the man in beast skin and Palace Master Wu Ju, he knew that the man in beast skin should be an enemy of the Six Desires Palace. Zhuo Wen saw the other 5 palace masters in another place where the man in animal skin was fighting with Palace Master Wu Ju. However, the 5 palace masters were looking at an old man with a long white beard in front of them as if they were facing a great enemy. The old man wore a black and white robe and his hair was tied up in a bun. He also held a horsetail whisk in his hand. However, the horsetail whisk was completely different from Palace Master Wu Ju's. The horsetail whisk's hair was black and white instead of pure white. It's old Lord Tushita of Tushita Palace and Yema Palace's Yema Palace. These 2 old men. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were gloomy. Why did people from Tushita Palace and Yema Palace come to our Six Desires Palace? Moreover, they are fighting the palace master directly. Qi Lan's beautiful eyes were filled with fear. Yun Maojia's eyes were gloomy and cold, but he remained silent. Zhuo Wen's heart skipped a beat. When the Tushita Palace was mentioned, Zhuo Wen immediately knew that the old man should be the master of the Tushita heavenly domain. As for the man in beast skin, he should be the master of the Yema heavenly domain. Zhuo Wen had only heard of these 2 heavens before. They were part of the 8 heavens, but he had never been there. Today, within the Six Desires Palace, he was able to see the lords of these 2 heavens. After Desireless brought Zhuo Wen and the others out, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. As for Palace Master Wu Ju, she coldly snorted and furiously swept out the horsetail whisk in her hand. It turned into a boundless white ocean that knocked back the beast-skinned man. After that, Palace Master Wu Ju landed beside Desireless. The other 5 palace masters also retreated and joined Palace Master Wu Ju. They stared at the old man and the man in animal skin with fear. "Are you guys alright?" Although Palace Master Wu Ju said so, she only looked at Yun Maojia and Yao Xiangjuan with concern. Zhuo Wen walked to the side of Palace Master Jingyun, while Qi Lan returned to the back of Palace Master Huating. "Where's Tan Kai?" Palace Master Xiang Lan of the Fragrant Desire Palace did not see Tan Kai's figure and realized that something was amiss. She immediately asked. Yao Xiangjuan said in a somewhat apologetic manner, "Martial Aunt Xiang Lan, when the 5 of us were teleporting back, something unexpected happened. A frightening tearing power was transmitted from the teleportation. Senior brother Tan Kai was the first to be struck by it." Yao Xiangjuan did not finish her words. She knew that Xiang Lan would understand what was going on. Grief appeared in Xiang Lan's eyes. After all, Tan Kai was the head disciple of their Fragrant Desire Palace. Yet, he had actually died in such a manner. How could she not be furious? "Yemazi, old Lord Tusita, the 2 of you will die miserably." Xiang Lan vented her anger and cursed at the old man and the man in animal skin. However, regardless of whether it was old Lord Tusita or Yemazi, they did not take Xiang Lan's curses to heart. The 2 of them were experts in the life and death realm. Thus, they did not take Xiang Lan, a life comprehension realm expert, to heart. Instead, the 2 of them looked toward Palace Master Wujue. "Palace Master Wujue, I always thought that Desireless was a groundless person. I never expected that you would really nurture a desireless person. However, I pity the vessel of this desireless person. In the end, it might become a wedding dress for someone else." Old Lord Tusita looked at Desireless, who was standing beside Palace Master Wujue. His turbid eyes shone brightly. Soon after, he ridiculed Desireless. Palace Master Wujue's eyes flickered. However, she sneered and said, "Old Lord Tusita, Yemazi, why did the two of you target me the moment you arrived? I don't remember my 6 Desires Palace offending your Tusita Palace and Yema Palace, right?" Old Lord Tusita chuckled and said, "Don't talk about us. It was Yemazi who attacked you the moment he arrived. I'm a person who doesn't like to fight. As for Yemazi, it might be because he hasn't fought for so long that his hands are itching." The corners of Palace Master Wujue's eyes couldn't help but twitch when she heard this reason. However, she quickly calmed down. Palace Master Wujue and the other 5 Palace Masters had naturally come here to welcome Yao Xiangjuan's group. However, just as they arrived, Yemazi and Old Lord Tusita suddenly appeared. Yemazi was like a mad dog. He immediately pounced at Palace Master Wujue and started fighting with her. As for the teleportation process that Zhuo and the others were in, they were affected by the shockwaves from the battle between Yemazi and Palace Master Wujue. That was why such a change occurred. If it wasn't for Desireless, they would have been unable to leave. Palace Master Wujue also knew that Yemazi's sudden attack was definitely planned. His goal was to show her his strength. "What is your goal?" Palace Master Wujue couldn't help but ask. If it was only Old Lord Tusita or Yemazi, Palace Master Wujue wouldn't be afraid. However, 2 life and death realm experts had suddenly appeared. This was especially true for Old Lord Tusita. This old man was extremely cunning. Moreover, his cultivation was even higher than hers. Even Palace Master Wujue couldn't help but feel nervous when facing these 2 people. Old Lord Tusita grinned and said, "Palace Master Wujue, our request is very simple. It's the desireless cultivation technique. Of course, if you give me this desireless directly, I won't mind." Palace Master Wujue sneered and said, "The desireless cultivation technique is the strongest cultivation technique of my 6 Desires Palace. Why should I give it to you?" Old Lord Tusita didn't mind at all and said indifferently, "Palace Master Wujue, don't worry. I won't take your desireless cultivation technique for free. I'll take out a corresponding item to exchange with you. The price definitely won't disappoint you." Palace Master Wujue mocked, "All right. Doesn't your Tusita Palace have a divine proof pill? If you give me that divine proof pill, I'll give you the desireless cultivation technique." As soon as Palace Master Wujue said this, Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He didn't expect the Tusita Palace to have a divine proof pill. It was said that the divine proof pill could increase the chances of reaching the Tao. It was something that all life and death realm experts yearned for even in their dreams. At present, Zhuowen had never seen a divine proof pill. However, he didn't expect the Tusita Palace to have such a divine proof pill. Chapter 2454. Spring and Snow Palace Master Wujue sneered. "The desireless cultivation technique was left behind by the founder of my 6 Desires Palace. It contains the secret of Tao affirmation. I know you want the secret of Tao affirmation, but you don't even want to exchange the Tao affirmation divine pill. Do you think I'll give you the desireless cultivation technique?" Old Lord Tusita smiled faintly. "Do you think you have any other choice? Your 6 Desires Palace won't be able to stop me and Yemazi." "That's not necessarily true." Palace Master Wujue's eyes were gloomy. He ordered the 5 Palace Masters to leave as soon as possible and return to 6 Desires Palace. Then, he threw out the horsetail whisk in his hand at Old Lord Tusita. However, Yemazi sneered and intercepted Palace Master Wujue. Then, the 2 of them started fighting again. The battle between the 2 extreme life and death realm experts was absolutely shocking. Even Zhuowen felt his heart skip a beat as he watched from the side. Zhuowen knew very well that if he were to face such an expert, he wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow and would die without a doubt. "Let's leave this place quickly," Palace Master Jing Yun hurriedly said. Then, she took out a flying divine tool and left with Zhuowen in a stream of light. The other palace masters also took out their flying divine tools. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Take this old man with you. As long as you hand over the desireless cultivation technique, this old man will give each of you a life or death pill. Old Lord Tusida's voice was faintly discernible and instantly appeared in their ears. It was as if old Lord Tusida was whispering in their ears. Zhuowen was shocked. He thought that old Lord Tusida was really rich. He actually wanted to give out 5 life or death pills. One must know that he had risked his life to obtain the life or death pill from the divine pill secret realm. It was also partly due to luck. From old Lord Tusida's tone, one could tell that this old man didn't care about the life or death pill too much. After hearing about the life or death pill, the 5 palace masters hesitated for a moment. However, they still suppressed the impulse in their hearts and left this place. Sigh. Looks like you guys are refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. In that case, I have no choice but to use crude means to make you guys obedient. Old Lord Tusida sighed softly and continued to hover in the air. He swung the horsetail whisk in his hand and instantly, 2 streams of black and white energy surged out. The 2 streams of black and white energy swirled around each other, then transformed into an enormous black and white flood dragon that was 3,000 meters long. Lord Tusida stood atop the flood dragon, which roared and shot forward in pursuit of the 5 palace lords. Rumble! Unfortunately, the moment the black and white flood dragons flew out, they were blocked by a slender figure. Desireless' slender body blocked the black and white flood dragon's path. Her slender jade-like hands began to form hand seals, and countless traces of Tao surged out from her body, causing the black and white flood dragon to completely stop in midair. Lord Tusida silently looked at Desireless before him with eyes filled with admiration. He muttered in a low voice, "This Desireless is truly perfect. He's actually so compatible with the heavenly Tao. He's clearly only at the life comprehension realm, yet he's so powerful." Unfortunately, Desireless' core Tao has been grasped by Wujue. If that wasn't the case, I would have snatched this perfect Desireless and nurtured him myself. Lord Tusida shook his head and looked at Desireless before him, a trace of pity appearing in his eyes. Bang! Lord Tusida casually swung the horsetail whisk in his hand. Instantly, the black and white energies transformed into countless lines that bombarded Desireless. Bang! Desireless let out a muffled groan and couldn't help but retreat. The traces of Tao circulating around his body were sliced into pieces by the black and white lines. Many holes appeared on the linen clothes on his body, from which cherry-red blood flowed out. He appeared to be in an extremely sorry state. However, this Desireless wasn't simple at all. With a light wave of his lily-white hand, countless traces of Tao energy revolved around his body and condensed into a sparkling and translucent zither. Desireless' slender and jade-like hands rapidly strummed the zither strings. Instantly, terrifying traces of Tao energy surged out like waves along with the zither music. Extremely sharp killing intent was contained within the zither music. The black and white lines that were originally unstoppable like a hot knife through butter were completely annihilated by the zither music that contained killing intent. This is spring white snow? Wujue, that madman, actually gave the heaven-crushing source fragment, spring white snow, to this Desireless. Isn't that guy afraid of a backlash? Lord Tusida's expression finally changed. The zither music grew louder and louder, and the killing intent soared into the sky. It was as though the entire area had turned into a terrifying battlefield in an instant, as all kinds of sounds of battle rang out incessantly. On the flying-type divine tool, Zhuowen had been paying attention to the battle behind him the entire time. When his gaze landed on the zither in Desireless' hand, his pupils abruptly shrank. Although this zither was formed by Tao energy, Zhuowen was able to tell with a single glance that the appearance of this zither was too similar to the zither that Moyan Wushang had held in his hand when he had parted ways with him. Junior sister Qilin, did the song "A Male Phoenix Seeking a Female Phoenix" that you played back then come from Desireless? Zhuowen looked at Qilin, who was standing behind Palace Master Huating, and asked through voice transmission. His voice contained an unquestionable tone. Qilan's beautiful eyes flickered, but she remained silent. Junior sister Qilin, please tell me, Zhuowen said in a very serious manner. Qilin sighed softly. Originally, she didn't want to answer Zhuowen. However, when she recalled that Zhuowen had saved her life before, she truly couldn't bear to refuse his request. Senior brother Long, I indeed heard that song from Desireless. However, I don't think she's the friend you're talking about, right? Qilin said with uncertainty. Zhuowen's heart sank. He continued, did she willingly become a Desireless? That should be the case. After all, cultivating the Desireless cultivation technique has a very high probability of successfully validating one's Tao. Otherwise, it's impossible for someone to willingly abandon the 6 desires and become a Desireless without any perception, Qilin replied through voice transmission. Zhuowen sneered. He didn't say anything else. Instead, he leaped out of the flying-type divine tool. He was very clear about Moyan Wushang's character. She wasn't someone who truly had the ambition to reach the peak. Even though she had cultivated with all her might, it was only to help him. How could such a stubborn girl abandon the 6 desires and pursue the illusory heavenly Tao? Abandoning the 6 desires was equivalent to forgetting Zhuowen. She wouldn't even be able to perceive him. Zhuowen was now even more certain that Moyan Wushang didn't willingly become a Desireless. Moreover, when Moyan Wushang parted ways with him, she played the song "A Male Phoenix Seeking a Female Phoenix." Now, she was playing it again in the 6 Desires Palace. This meant that she was still reluctant to part with this world. She was also using the zither to resist her current fate. Chapter 2455. Inyang Pisces, Longwen, come back! Palace Master Jing Yun quickly noticed Zhuowen, who jumped out of the flying divine tool. She could not help but reach out with her right hand in an attempt to grab Zhuowen. Unfortunately, Zhuowen kicked with both legs and cleverly dodged Palace Master Jing Yun's grab. Palace Master Jing Yun, thank you for bringing me to the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake. Now that this matter is over, we don't owe each other anything. See you again. After saying that, Zhuowen turned into a stream of light and disappeared from the spot. Palace Master Jing Yun stared blankly at the disappearing figure. Soon after, she felt a little dispirited. Originally, she thought that Zhuowen was someone who valued relationships and loyalty. Now that he chose to leave at this critical juncture, Palace Master Jing Yun's opinion of Zhuowen changed a lot. Jing Yun, Longwen left just like that. I'm afraid that he saw that our 6 Desires Palace is in trouble and fled first. Should we capture him? Palace Master Xianglan said gloomily. Palace Master Jing Yun shook her head and said, forget it. This time, I brought him to the 6 Desires Heavenly Lake to return a favor. Now that I've returned his favor, we don't owe each other anything in the future. Just ignore him. Since Palace Master Jing Yun had already said so, Palace Master Xianglan naturally had nothing else to say. Hence, the group continued to fly towards the 6 Desires Palace. On the flying divine tool, Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were locked. She sighed softly and did not say anything. Although she was somewhat disappointed by Zhuowen's decision to flee at the last moment, she felt that Zhuowen wasn't such a person. Perhaps Big Brother Zhuo has other important matters to attend to. That's why he's in a hurry to leave. Yao Xiangjuan could not help but comfort herself. In the desolate region, the battle between Palace Master Wujue and Yemazi was getting more and more intense. The battle between the 2 extremes of life and death was too terrifying. Every move they made could annihilate countless stars. If one looked carefully, Yemazi was still slightly inferior. At this moment, He was being suppressed by Palace Master Wujue. It would not be long before he was defeated. Although both of them were at the extremes of life and death, there was still a difference in strength between them. Even if one's cultivation level was the same, one's strength would not be the same. While Palace Master Wujue was suppressing Yamazi, she also noticed the battle on the other side. The battle between Sage Lord Tusida and Desireless had reached its climax. Although the battle between Old Lord Tusida and Desireless appeared to be evenly matched, Palace Master Wujue's heart sank. He knew very well that Old Lord Tusida was very powerful and even stronger than him. Only he had yet to use his full strength. If Old Lord Tusida were to use his full strength, Desireless would likely be destroyed. Palace Master Wujue gritted her teeth. Her attacks became increasingly fierce. She planned to defeat Yamazi as soon as possible and then take Desireless away. This Desireless was the first woman to have such a high compatibility with the Desireless cultivation technique. If she were to destroy this Desireless, it would be very difficult for her to find another Desireless who was as perfect as him. At this moment, Old Lord Tusida was waving his horsetail whisk non-stop. However, he had a relaxed expression on his face. On the other hand, Desireless was having a very difficult time resisting his attack. His lily-white hands were rapidly playing the zither. Frightening amounts of Taoist rhymes erupted from his zither and blocked the attacks of Old Lord Tusida's horsetail whisk. "I'm not going to play with you anymore. Desireless, your Desireless cultivation technique has yet to reach perfection. Although your strength is pretty good, it's still far from enough." Old Lord Tusida lightly smiled. With a wave of his horsetail whisk, countless amounts of black and white energies immediately turned into two black and white fishes. The head and tail of the two fishes were connected to each other. Then, they started to rapidly spin and shoot out. Desireless' hands started to play the zither even faster. His Taoist rhymes started to violently surge forth like a tide. Unfortunately, even though Desireless' Taoist rhymes were very powerful, they were completely useless against the black and white fishes. When the Taoist rhymes collided with the black and white fishes, they were easily neutralized. Desireless still had an expressionless face. He held his zither with both hands and tapped the air with his feet. While retreating, he continued to attack the black and white fishes. He hoped that he would be able to neutralize the might of the black and white fishes with his attack. Unfortunately, the black and white fishes were truly too frightening. Desireless' attacks were unable to stop the black and white fishes at all. Thus, Desireless could only continuously retreat. Although Desireless did not have any desires, and did not even have any perception, his divine sense was terrifyingly powerful. Thus, he knew how frightening the black and white fishes were. He had a premonition that if he were to be struck by the black and white fishes, even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. "Old Lord Tusida, you actually took out a heaven-crushing source energy? Old man, you!" Palace Master Wujue, who was originally fighting against Yamazi, also noticed what was happening. Especially when he saw the black and white fishes, his pupils shrunk to the extreme. He couldn't help but cry out in alarm. The heaven-crushing source energy fragment of the Tusida heavenly domain was called the yin-yang pill-fish. Its might was not the slightest bit inferior to the heaven-crushing source energy of the Six Desires heavenly domain, the spring white snow. Furthermore, due to Old Lord Tusida being extremely proficient in using the yin-yang pill-fish, the might of the yin-yang pill-fish was naturally much greater than Palace Master Wujue's. Originally, Desireless, who was compatible with the heavenly Tao, would be able to display an extremely powerful might when using the spring white snow. However, Desireless' cultivation was still too low. There was still a gap between him and Old Lord Tusida. Even though the spring white snow was being controlled by Desireless, it was still at a disadvantage when fighting against an old fox like Old Lord Tusida. Zhuowen was hidden in the darkness of the starry sky. As he looked at the yin-yang pill fish used by old Lord Tusada, his heart involuntarily started to beat wildly. The yin-yang pill fish looked very ordinary. However, for some unknown reason, it gave Zhuowen an extremely dangerous feeling. This feeling of danger was very strong. It was as if Zhuowen was an insignificant ant in front of the yin-yang pill fish, and the yin-yang pill fish was a vast mountain. Is this the Tusada Heaven Domain's heaven-crushing source energy? Zhuowen naturally heard Palace Master Wu Jue's words. He didn't expect old Lord Tusada to take out the heaven-crushing source energy so quickly. Actually, what Zhuowen didn't know was that the reason old Lord Tusada took out the heaven-crushing source energy was because Desireless had taken out the spring white snow from the very beginning. The sparkling and translucent zither in Desireless' hand was formed from the spring white snow. Whoever started the trouble should end it. If one wanted to defeat a cultivator with the heaven-crushing source energy, they naturally had to use the heaven-crushing source energy. At this moment, old Lord Tusada was still rejoicing that Desireless wasn't very proficient in using the spring white snow. Therefore, he was able to suppress Desireless by using the heaven-crushing source energy. Seeing the black and white fish getting closer and closer to Desireless, Zhuowen started to feel somewhat anxious. He really wanted to rush out and save Desireless. However, Zhuowen knew that even though his current strength wasn't bad, the 4 people in front of him were all much stronger than him. If he rushed over now, he would simply be throwing his life away. Perhaps he would die on the spot before he could save Desireless. Moreover, Zhuowen also noticed that old Lord Tusada, who was controlling the black and white fish, would occasionally look in his direction. Perhaps old Lord Tusada had already discovered him. However, old Lord Tusada didn't place him in his eyes. Chapter 2456. Dao Proving Tools. Zhuowen heaved a sigh of relief. He was certain that old Lord Tusada had already noticed him when he'd arrived. Fortunately, old Lord Tusada did not pay too much attention to him. After all, he knew that his cultivation was nothing in old Lord Tusada's eyes. Bang! The black and white fishes finally arrived before Desireless. With no other choice, Desireless formed hand seals and controlled the zither in his hand to violently smash against the black and white fishes. The collision between the 2 great essences was extremely powerful. Large swaths of the starry sky were destroyed, forming a black hole that grew larger and larger. All of the stars, meteorites, and other materials in the surrounding starry sky were annihilated into nothingness. Palace Master Wu Ju and Yemazi, who were originally fighting, could not help but stop their battle. The 2 of them distanced themselves from this region in shock. Looking at the terrifying destructive power, they were both stupefied. They never imagined that the collision between the 2 great essences would actually cause such a terrifying might. Furthermore, the shock waves from the collision were rapidly spreading from the original desolate region to the rest of the 6 Desires star field. At the instant when the 2 great essences collided, Zhuowen immediately took out the space-time wheel and rushed towards Desireless, who was sent flying. Zhuowen grabbed Desireless' slender waist. Without the slightest hesitation, he controlled the space-time wheel and fled into the distance. Unfortunately, he had truly underestimated the shock waves from the collision between the 2 great essences. The instant he saved Desireless, the shock waves from the collision had already reached him. Immediately, Zhuowen took out all of the defensive methods he had on him. However, it only took an instant for all of his defensive methods to be turned into nothingness the instant they came into contact with the shockwave. Even the surface of the phagocytosis was covered in extremely deep and terrifying crack. This gave Zhuowen quite a fright. The phagocytosis was King Devourer's life treasure. Its toughness was definitely close to that of a Tao-confirming divine weapon. Yet, cracks had started to appear on it from the shockwave. Fortunately, this phagocytosis bought Zhuowen some time. Zhuowen activated the space-time wheel and retrieved the cracked phagocytosis. Then, he turned into a stream of light and disappeared. What shocked Zhuowen was that the space-time wheel's speed was very fast, but the ripples spread even faster. They caught up with the space-time wheel in an instant. Zhuowen was affected by a small ripple. He groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. This was only a small ripple. If he was caught up by the remaining ripples, he would not be able to survive. At the thought of this, Zhuowen took out the space-time core without hesitation and pressed it into the space-time wheel. Suddenly, the space-time wheel's speed increased greatly. The ripples that were about to catch up with the space-time wheel were gradually left behind. In just 10 breaths, the space-time wheel had left the Six Desires star field. Turning around, Zhuowen discovered that the terrifying shock waves were spreading out from the center of the desolate region. It actually covered 30% of the Six Desires star zone. Zhuowen knew that the star field that was covered by the ripples would probably be completely destroyed. The cultivators in the star field would definitely not be spared. Moreover, Zhuowen also found that the Six Desires Palace was also affected by the ripples. Although he was a little worried about Palace Master Jingyun and Yao Xiangjuan, he knew that he could not even protect himself now. He definitely could not care so much. After all, the Six Desires Palace was the pillar of the entire sky region. Could not be destroyed so easily. Inside the Six Desires Palace, there must be extremely powerful defensive measures. Is this the heaven-breaking origin? It's really powerful. The scene of the two fragments of the heaven-breaking origin colliding was still vivid in Zhuowen's mind. He would probably never be able to forget it for the rest of his life. As for Zhuowen, he finally experienced how terrifying the heaven-breaking origin was. Moreover, this was only a fragment of the heaven-breaking origin. If it was the complete heaven-breaking origin, how terrifying would it be? Zhuowen looked at Desireless, who was in his arms. He sighed and said, "If you are really desireless, I will help you recover your original appearance no matter what." After saying that, Zhuowen's gaze turned gloomy. He was now certain that Moyan Wushang had not become desireless willingly. Instead, it was Palace Master Wujue who had forced him to do so. "Little brat, you are not simple. You actually have the space-time disk of the space-time master." "No, this is not a spacetime disk. It should be a spacetime divine tool that was refined from a spacetime disk." An indifferent voice suddenly sounded. After that, Zhuowen felt the spacetime wheel shake violently. Soon after, he and Moyan Wushang were ruthlessly thrown out. The instant they were thrown out, Zhuowen immediately stored the spacetime wheel into his spiritual ring. After that, he pointed his right hand at the void and immediately used the spacetime divine ability, Ocean's Waning Sunday. The spacetime energy turned into a huge spacetime ocean. At the end of the spacetime ocean, a bizarre waning sun rose. In an instant, the space around Zhuowen was enveloped by the spacetime energy. Bang. A figure was caught off guard and was forced out of the starry sky by the spacetime energy. Only then did Zhuowen discover that the owner of the voice was Old Lord Tusida. He did not expect that Old Lord Tusida would chase after them while dealing with spring white snow. It seemed that this old man had his eyes on Moyan Wushang. "Senior, I have no enmity with you. Why are you chasing after me?" Zhuowen stood in the spacetime ocean and stared vigilantly at Old Lord Tusida. Then, he cupped his fists and asked in a deep voice. Old Lord Tusida looked at the spacetime ocean surrounding Zhuowen with a strange expression. He did not expect that this little guy before him not only possessed the spacetime wheel, but also comprehended the spacetime divine ability. This was somewhat amazing. Indeed, this old man possesses neither grievances nor hatred with you. However, of all things, you shouldn't have abducted Desireless. Furthermore, you abducted him from this old man's hands. Tell me, if I don't hunt you down, who should I hunt down? Old Monarch Tusida said indifferently. Although Old Lord Tusida's tone was extremely calm, Zhuowen could feel a chilling killing intent. This old man's killing intent had already locked onto him. As long as Zhuowen showed any signs of escaping, this old man would not hesitate to kill him. Zhuan cupped his fists again and asked respectfully, Senior, may I ask why you are chasing after Desireless? She doesn't seem to have offended you. Old Lord Tusita said indifferently, This Desireless is that old woman Wu Jue's tool to prove her Tao. If that old woman succeeds in proving her Tao, I, her old neighbor, will definitely be killed by that old woman as an example to others. I will not allow that to happen. Tool to prove her Tao? Zhuan asked doubtfully. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.